Hogwarts, The Return of Turmoil. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, Being Spied On. Is it Professor Charles who is spying? Maureen looked at Professor Charles back in doubt, but Professor Charles seemed very focused, with all his attention on the painting. If it was Professor Charles who was staring at Maureen, it would be impossible for Professor Charles to react so calmly in such a short time. But if it wasn't Professor Charles, who else could it be? Maureen couldn't get rid of the strange feeling in his heart. He turned around again and continued to pick up the feather pen to test the fruit painting in front of him. Although he had tested that the fruit painting did not need to be repaired, he didn't care. His eyes were erratic, looking for that strange feeling everywhere. But after Maureen discovered it, the strange feeling suddenly became looming, as if it was everywhere, but he couldn't find a specific place. Now even Maureen was not sure whether it came from Professor Charles. Maureen rode his flying broom calmly to a picture of 13 wizards having dinner not far to the left of Professor Charles. He kept looking at Professor Charles. Professor Charles had stopped next to another painting. He would stop and observe for a while before encountering a picture that interested him. But even so, Maureen still couldn't rule out Professor Charles as a suspect, because the strange feeling was erratic, and it felt like someone was peeking at him from all directions. "Hey! What are you doing? You ruined my last dinner!" A wizard in the painting in front of Maureen shouted angrily at Maureen. Maureen realized that he was only focused on finding the source of the strange feeling, but didn't notice that his brush was constantly scratching on the painting. His brush gushed out white ink, which smeared the sandwich on one of the wizard's plates. "It's okay, your sandwich will be restored, and the paint on my brush will disappear soon." Maureen quickly stopped painting, apologized, and then said, "Oh yes, there are marks on the brush, which means you also need to repair it. Sorry, your dinner will be suspended, everyone hurry up." Maureen took the painting off the wall, and it was slightly off-center when he took it, and the whole painting instantly fell over. The 13 wizards who were dining shouted in panic and rolled down in unison, hitting the edge of the frame and forming a pile. The dining table was also overturned, and the pots and pans crashed all over the floor in the painting. All the dinners were ruined by Maureen. "You will be punished, little brat. You are more annoying than that bastard Hoyle." Maureen ignored the protests of the 13 wizards and moved the paintings to the stairs, where there were already 9 paintings that needed to be repaired. The 13 wizards were indignantly climbing up from the edge of the frame. They began to straighten the dining table that Maureen had knocked over, put on the tablecloth, and picked up the pots and pans from the floor in the painting. Everyone's face was full of anger. "In fact, I suggest you clean up later, maybe you will have to overturn it again later," Maureen kindly reminded. Professor Charles and Maureen were appraising whether the paintings needed to be repaired, and they also had to move the portraits, which caused dissatisfaction among many portraits. Many people in the portraits were visiting each other and protesting loudly, not to mention some animals chirping and barking. In just 10 minutes, Maureen was shot with poison needles by 4 bumblebees, 3 fire dragons spitting fire, 2 black dogs barking wildly, and a phoenix constantly burning itself and reborn to protest him. Fortunately, these were all things in the paintings, otherwise Maureen would not be so calm. Professor Charles was explaining their purpose to the protesting paintings, but Maureen didn't care about it at all. He was more concerned about where the lingering feeling of being spied on came from. They appraised from the 3rd floor to the 7th floor. The higher they went, the more paintings. Maureen was surprised to find that there were more paintings that needed to be repaired. By the 7th floor, almost half of the paintings needed to be repaired. Professor Charles said to himself, "This is really weird. Half of the magic of the paintings has been lost. It seems that my workload will be getting bigger and bigger." Maureen looked at Professor Charles, and his doubts in his heart became more and more. But gradually, he suddenly found where the feeling of being spied on came from. By the 7th floor, the feeling of being spied on was becoming more and more obvious. When he appraised a picture of a tug-of-war between a screech-tailed scroot and a hippogriff, he suddenly turned his head to the right. On the right wall, there is a half-meter-long portrait, which depicts residential buildings, which look like the kind of residential areas where Muggles live. Each residential building is painted with different colors of wall dust. There are many pedestrians coming and going on the street, and some wizards riding flying brooms are galloping through the air. Maureen quickly came to the front of the painting. The strong sense of peeping just now came from this painting. He carefully searched for the pedestrians, and inadvertently saw that there seemed to be a vague figure hiding behind the curtains by the window of the attic of a house in the painting. When Maureen approached the painting to see what was going on, someone in the house pulled the curtains. Then the sense of peeping disappeared. Am I being watched by the person in the painting? Maureen felt a little weird. How could he be peeped at by the person in the painting? And why did the person in the painting spy on him all the way here? He picked up the black feather pen and drew 2 strokes on the portrait. The brush did not leave any marks, and the painting did not need to be repaired. Professor Charles, what is this painting for? Maureen asked. Professor Charles looked up, glanced at the picture of the community, and said, that's a community where wizards and muggles live together. Let me see. This style of painting is the masterpiece of Paingad. He is a very famous painter who specializes in paintings with a theme of harmonious coexistence between muggles and wizards. If you look closely, you will find that some of the people in the paintings on the street can move, and some can't. Maureen observed carefully and found that on the busy street, some people wearing muggle clothes kept walking forward, but they just stood there without taking a step. Those wearing wizard robes were walking, and the wizards who could move had to avoid the muggles who couldn't move to avoid bumping into them. Maureen couldn't help but ask curiously, is it possible to combine the painting styles of muggles and wizards on a canvas? Didn't you say last time that the people in wizard paintings cannot be on muggle canvases, or the magic will be ineffective, right? Professor Charles explained, this is the power of Paingad. He used very advanced magic to break this limitation. We still don't know how he did it. Basically, except for him, no other painter can make the motionless muggles and the moving wizards in the same painting and still maintain completely different styles. The latest novel is first published on Liuji 9 Shuba. Professor Charles' fingers touched the frame lightly and he exclaimed, this canvas is specially used for wizard paintings. It's a very ordinary canvas. If it were you or me, no matter how we draw people on this canvas, the people would move on the paper. Even if a wizard with no talent for painting draws a person, this person will at least blink his eyes, move a finger or breathe slightly, but Paingad has the ability to make some people completely unable to move, which is really magical. It's a pity that his painting skills have not been made public, and now it has become a mystery in the wizarding painter world. Maureen thought for a moment and asked, Professor, is it possible that those people who can't move were not painted by Paingad, but he asked a muggle to paint them? People painted by muggles will not move, but people painted by wizards will move. If a painting is painted by muggles and wizards at the same time, then this phenomenon can be explained. Professor Charles smiled and said, no, muggles don't have magic and can't create on such a magical canvas. They can't leave any traces. And Paingad has painted in front of many people before without the help of others. He must have found some trick of painting. It's a pity that we can't learn it. But after all, there are some pretty strange things about this painting. Professor Charles took out a magnifying glass again. Chapter 102, Paingad's painting. What's strange, Professor? Maureen asked. Professor Charles said thoughtfully, no, maybe I saw it wrong. He carefully took down the painting and gently brushed off the dust on the frame. Maureen noticed that there was a strange symbol in the lower right corner of the painting. It was a paintbrush with an eye under the tip of the brush. The eye was half open and half closed. Maureen said, Professor, this painting does not need to be restored. I just checked it and there is no handwriting left. Professor Charles replied, it doesn't matter. I just want to study the style of Paingad's painting. You should continue to check the painting over there. Maureen pointed to the house in the painting and said, Professor, I just saw a strange person peeking behind this window. Is this normal? Professor Charles smiled and said, of course it's normal. How can you ask the people in the painting not to go into the house? He took out his wand, floated the painting, and placed it in the corner of the corridor on the 7th floor, where many paintings that needed to be restored were also placed. After doing this, he turned around to deal with other portraits. Maureen looked at Professor Charles back suspiciously. He was sure that Professor Charles was not telling the truth. Maybe he noticed something wrong with the painting, but he didn't want Maureen to know. This made Maureen more suspicious. Maureen looked at the painting in the corner of the corridor again, but he no longer felt that he was being watched from the painting. Maureen was busy all morning with doubts. What Hugo was worried about, Professor Charles would do to him, did not happen, and in fact, nothing would happen. Because they were already in the castle, and it was the weekend, students came and went on the stairs, and Maureen and Professor Charles riding a flying broom in the castle were naturally very eye-catching. Many students knew Maureen, and some would greet Professor Charles and ask what they were doing. In addition, many portraits were protesting. It would be unwise for Professor Charles to do something to Maureen under the eyes of so many people. It took about 3 hours to finally select all the paintings that needed to be repaired, a total of more than 50. Hugo and Sweep also encountered trouble. They were caught by the old Filch, who thought that the 2 first-year students had scribbled on the school portrait with a brush and threatened to put them in detention. Later, Filch caught them and was seen by Professor Charles on the way to the principal's office. That old guy. What a bad temper. On the way to lunch, Hugo was very annoyed, and then he remembered something. He quickly pulled Maureen over, looked at her carefully for a while, and asked, "Maureen, are you okay? Is there any part of your body missing? Do you remember what happened in the past hour? Do you feel a chill on your back? Have you returned to the past?" Professor Charles, Hugo lowered his voice, didn't cast a forgetfulness spell on you. No, you think too much? Are you really okay? No, I'm healthy and everything goes well. Don't worry. Maureen answered absent-mindedly. He was still thinking about the painting of Payengert in his mind. Why was there a person peeping at him in the painting? The most important thing is, what did Professor Charles see strange about the painting, and why did he hide it? He then told Hugo about these things, and after listening to them, Hugo vowed, there must be something wrong with Professor Charles. Aren't you talking nonsense? We have been suspecting him these days. Maureen said. At first we just suspected, but now we are basically sure. Maybe the painting of Payengert is priceless, and he wants to steal it and sell it. Hugo guessed. Do you think Professor Charles modified your memories and put a mark on your back just to steal the school's paintings and sell them? Maureen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You may have forgotten one thing. The wizard's paintings can speak. It's not easy to sell them. It's easy to know who stole the painting and where it came from. You can't stop the mouth of the person in the painting. Professor Charles won't do such a ridiculous thing. Then why do you think he did this? Hugo and Maureen found a seat in the hall and sat down. They were exhausted from flying around to identify paintings in the morning. He just grabbed the chicken leg and started to eat it. Sweet didn't join them. It seemed that he didn't know where to go in the blink of an eye. Maureen sat down, and Dewey crawled out of his pocket, jumped onto the dining table, and began to eat as if no one was around. Usually Dewey stayed in his pocket and followed him wherever he went. Others couldn't see it, and it wouldn't pay attention to others. Maureen was used to it. The whole thing seems to be related to the paintings, haven't you noticed? Maureen held his chin. He had no appetite and had been thinking about this in his mind. You disappeared and lost your memory. When I saw your memory, the paintings in the corridor on the 7th floor were always different. The portrait of Sir Cadogan, who is usually despised, was actually destroyed by Professor Charles, and Sir Cadogan had no idea what he saw. During the Quidditch match, I met Professor Charles in the corridor on the 7th floor. He didn't watch the game, but was admiring the paintings in the corridor. The latest novel is first published on Liuji 9 Shuba. Maureen slowly sorted out what happened. Some of the paintings in the castle have lost their magic and need to be repaired. There are especially many paintings in the corridor on the 7th floor that need to be repaired. This is too abnormal. Today I was also peeped at by a person in a painting. The person in the painting was peeping at me all the way and was finally discovered by me. Professor Charles seemed to be hiding something. The painting obviously didn't need to be repaired, but he still took it away. Hugo took a bite of Hungarian goulash and said, "The whole thing you said points to Professor Charles. What do you think has nothing to do with Professor Charles?" Maureen touched Doy's head. Doy took a sip of soup and called out comfortably. Suddenly an idea popped up in Maureen's mind, and he exclaimed, "What if the person in the painting today was not spying on me, but was on guard against Professor Charles?" Hugo put down the stewed beef and frowned. "What do you want to say?" Maureen's heartbeat quickened involuntarily, and he said, "What I mean is, the person in the painting of Payengert may know some secrets. He was spying on me all the way and wanted to find a chance to tell me something, but was discovered by Professor Charles in advance. Just like Sir Cadogan, the only difference is that Sir Cadogan didn't know what he saw and was destroyed in a daze. The person in the painting of Payengert really saw something but had no chance to say it." Maureen and Hugo looked at each other. If this was really the reason, then the situation would be very bad, because Professor Charles had taken away the painting that knew the truth. Chapter 103 Peaceful Painting. Maybe we still have time to go now. Hugo looked around nervously and continued in a low voice, but that's the professor. He can take the painting away, how can we take it away? Maureen knew that Hugo's worry was right. It was useless to go to Professor Charles now. He had no reason to take the painting. Even if he went to Principal McGonagall, it would be useless. One was a freshman and the other was a kind professor. It was self-evident who the principal would believe. Then should we look for this person like we looked for another portrait of Sir Cadogan? Hugo asked. Maureen shook his head. This painting is different from Sir Cadogan's portrait. Sir Cadogan can travel between his own portraits, but the painting of Pangert is not a portrait at all. If it is destroyed, it is really destroyed. Then we can report Professor Charles at that time. Hugo suggested. If we report a loss of the portrait, I feel that we will be the object of false accusation. Maureen said helplessly. As long as Professor Charles pushed the responsibility on them, Maureen and Hugo would have no way to defend themselves. Hugo looked even worse. He took a bite of beef fiercely. I shouldn't have agreed to help with this. The two of them had no other options. The only clue that might lead to the truth was cut off by Professor Charles. Now they could only take things one step at a time. But what Maureen didn't expect was that what they were worried about didn't happen. 3 days later, the painting of Pangert had been hung back. It wasn't destroyed by Professor Charles as Maureen and Hugo had guessed. It's strange, isn't it? Professor Charles should have destroyed it. Hugo said in surprise. The two of them stood by the fence of the corridor on the 7th floor, looking at the painting of Pangert hanging on the opposite wall, and their doubts deepened. Why do you say it as if you hope it will be destroyed? Maureen looked at the painting from a distance, but the feeling of being spied on by the person in the painting had disappeared. That's not the case. I just think it's not normal. Maybe Professor Charles has a change of heart? That's better. We don't have to worry all the time. Hugo said. Maureen looked around again and found that the paintings they had taken down from the wall last time had been hung back up. It seemed that Professor Charles had restored them all with magic. The people in the paintings were chatting, eating, and conquering the sea. Or maybe the person in the painting hiding in the house has been dealt with by Professor Charles. Maureen guessed in his heart. But this matter could not be verified. The paintings of Pangert were a distance away from them. Unless Maureen rode a flying broom, it would be difficult to get close to them. Riding a flying broom in the castle was against school rules, and he didn't want to be caught by the grumpy Filch. The next few weekends were calm. Apart from the weekly Quidditch games, there was little for Maureen to worry about. He also learned the water clearing spell from Arnold about not being afraid of fire. It was not easy to master the spell because Arnold created a ball of fire himself and asked Maureen to use water to extinguish the fire, but every time the water sprayed by Maureen's wand evaporated before it got close. Sometimes, when Arnold felt bored, he would just blow a breath casually, and the wandering flames would rush towards Maureen, and the billowing black smoke would wrap around Maureen, turning him into a black man. This is immoral. Maureen angrily sprayed a stream of water with his wand, pouring it over his head to give himself a shower, and then used a dehydration spell to dry his clothes. Look, with your level of magic, you can't even stop my breath. Tisk tisk, young man, you have to keep working hard. Arnold giggled non-stop. He always liked to play some pranks on Maureen when he was practicing spells. It's useless for you to compete with me. You should go and compete with Headmaster Dumbledore. By the way, who of you two has better magic? Maureen asked casually. Guess. Arnold blinked. I guess it's you. Good boy, you have good vision. I like your frankness. Arnok looked very satisfied, but then he changed the subject. It's useless for you to flatter me. I'll tell you when I'm happy one day. Then I won't go against my conscience. I think Principal Dumbledore is powerful. Maybe you are in front of him, just like I am in front of you. Arnok picked up his cane and hit Maureen with it, staring at him and said, Am I as bad as you? Then prove it to me. Everyone knows Principal Dumbledore, but who knows your name? Anyway, I'm better than you. Arnok blew another breath, and the billowing smoke wrapped Maureen again. Maureen was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Arnok was used to Maureen trying to get him to say something at any time. Now he spoke without leaking a single drop of water. Maureen still didn't know Arnok's identity. Every time Maureen asked what magic his heterochromatic eyes had, Arnok would blow a breath to change the subject. When we get back at Christmas, I'll teach you how to transform the flames you cast. If you have a conflict with your classmates, you can make the flame magic more flexible, or you can use the opponent's magic for your own benefit. Arnok stood up and stretched. The dean said that students should get along with each other in a friendly manner and love each other, and not use magic to fight casually. Maureen said seriously. You did it. Arnok looked at Maureen with a smile. I'm more obedient. Maureen automatically ignored the fact that he used the petrification spell on Carlo in the first class of the new semester, but apart from that, he didn't usually cast magic on other students, except for Hugo, who would help Hugo put out a fire from time to time. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Arnok didn't believe it. Okay, I won't talk to you anymore. Go back and practice magic. There are many magic skills that teachers in school will not teach you. You have to understand them by yourself. This small bottle of Dragon Flame Cold Repellent is for you. Don't drink it carelessly. 1 drop is enough for you to wear shorts in the ice and snow for a whole day. It will help you to cast fire. Don't drink a big gulp like last time. Otherwise, your magic will get out of control again and it won't work. Arnok took out a bottle the size of an index finger and handed it to Maureen in a bad mood. This is a good thing, thank you, Mr. Arnok. Maureen took it happily. Drinking a drop can make you wear short sleeves like in summer, and you don't need to wear cotton clothes this winter. After Maureen returned to school, the head of the class, Nelson, brought a Christmas school leaving registration form. Hugo and Maureen both signed on the form. They both wanted to go home for Christmas. Then they received a notice prohibiting minors from using magic outside the school. Why can't I use magic outside of school? Will I turn muggles into elves on Christmas? Hugo threw the notice into his school bag rudely. They are not worried that you will turn muggles into owls. Maureen began to pack his things and couldn't help laughing. They know you don't have that ability. Maybe they are more worried that you will burn your bed. Forget it. My recent fire accidents have improved significantly. If you don't believe me, just look. Hugo pulled out his wand and pointed it at the clothes on the bed, saying, "Violent." Whoosh! A flame jumped out and set his sweater on fire. A clear spring is gushing. Maureen quickly grabbed his wand and sent out a stream of clear water to extinguish the flame. You should not use the folding spell to fold clothes in the future, Maureen said earnestly. Hugo blushed slightly, but still said with certainty, in fact, the flame just now is smaller than usual. He threw the sweater with several holes burned into the suitcase and prepared to take it home to his mother to repair it. Maureen packed his luggage. Sir Cadogan on the bedside table was still shouting and killing tirelessly. Maureen threw him into his school bag to avoid leaving him here and being destroyed again. Chapter 104 Snowstorm on the train. Hogwarts was closed for Christmas. Maureen, Hugo and other students rode in an unmanned carriage to the train station in Hogsmeade Village. The carriage was moving automatically, and it looked like no one was pulling it. My dad said this is a thestral. Unfortunately, we can't see it, but we can touch it. When they arrived at the train station, Hugo patted the thestral on the back and exclaimed. Maureen felt that he was more like patting the air. He looked at toy in his pocket. He hadn't figured out what toy was yet. Like the thestrals, it seemed to be invisible. Hugo and the others looked at toy as if they were looking at air. Aren't you and Lily going back by train? Maureen used the levitation spell to move the luggage off the carriage. Hugo shook his head. We are going to the joke shop in Hogsmeade to find my dad, and then we will go home with him. So happy Christmas, man. I will try to steal some fun things from my dad's shop. He never lets me touch it. If I am lucky, I can steal something for you as a Christmas present. Hugo smiled and waved, and left with Lily. After Maureen said goodbye to Hugo and Lily, she squeezed onto the train with her luggage and easily found an empty carriage. Unlike the beginning of the school year, not all students go home during the Christmas holidays, so there are not many people on the train, and the last few carriages are empty. Most of the students are very excited to go home during the Christmas holidays. Many of them are playing in the aisles of the train, playing with magic toys that are usually forbidden to play in school, and some people even make some fireworks, which bounce on the walls of the aisle and bloom everywhere. With a long whistle, the train had left Hogsmeade. Maureen leaned against the window, watching the mountains in the distance flying back. He felt relaxed, as if those strange things had nothing to do with him after leaving Hogwarts. He bought some Scream sandwiches for lunch on the train and slept for 2 or 3 hours. In the afternoon, it started snowing outside. The wind and snow were getting stronger and stronger, and the snow covered the mountains and fields. Maureen could see the Muggle highway in the distance. Many cars on the highway were blocked by snow. Some Muggles were clearing the road, but these scenes disappeared in a flash. The heavy snow had blocked the view, and there was only a vast expanse of white outside. He began to practice the fire spell and the water spell while he was still on the train and could cast magic. Arnold taught him last time how to prevent himself from being burned by the fire he cast, and he had perfectly controlled the fire. It's not that bad, is it, Dwee? Maureen's once spurted out a stream of flames, and the flames were like a burning bandage, wrapping around his arm in circles. These flames were summoned by him, and if he controlled them properly, he could be immune to the high temperature of the flames. Dwee burped on the table, and Maureen took it as a sign of agreement. Maybe I can cast fire and water at the same time. Maureen was thinking about whether he could use two different magics at the same time, but at this moment, a sudden crash sound came from somewhere outside, like the sound of glass breaking, which could be heard clearly in the carriage. Maureen didn't care much at first, thinking that it was just a student who accidentally blew up the glass window of the train while setting off fireworks. Such a small matter could be solved with a simple repair spell, but gradually, it seemed to be getting noisier outside, as if there were students shouting in panic, as if something had happened. It's just a glass window that was blown up, is it that serious? Maureen stood up in confusion and prepared to go and see what was going on. At the moment when the train door was opened, a cold wind suddenly blew in his face, causing Maureen, who was not wearing a coat, to shiver. He felt very strange because the train was enchanted and it was always warm, so he took off his coat. Maureen stuck his head out and glanced at the corridor. Then he was surprised to find that the corridor of the train was covered with countless snow and wind at some point, as if a blizzard outside had swept into the train. There was even a layer of frost on the glass of the train door. Many people were shouting and screaming. Many students used various spells to try to get rid of the snow and wind. The sounds of spells such as clean up and melt the ice and snow were everywhere, but it seemed to be useless. Everyone could do nothing about the snow and wind. Bang! 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 There was a constant sound of glass exploding in the corridor in front, as if someone had broken the glass of the train compartment. The screams of students rang everywhere, mixed with the howling of the blizzard. Maureen felt more and more that something was wrong. He put on his coat, grabbed his wand, and went to see what was going on in the snow and wind in the corridor. But the strong wind in the corridor made it difficult for him to move, blocking his sight. He couldn't even see the scene 3 meters away. At this time, the voice of the conductor rang out in every carriage on the train. Don't panic, students. This is just a magical accident caused by the snow and wind. We will deal with it soon. Please stay in your own carriage, close the door, and stay with your companions. But before the conductor finished speaking, the voice suddenly stopped, as if someone blocked the conductor's voice. Maureen could only retreat to his own carriage. When he was about to close the door, there was a slight explosion in the air, as if something was squeezed out of the air. Maureen frowned slightly. This was the sound of apparition. Is anyone apparition on the Hogwarts train? Maureen felt a bone-chilling cold sweeping over him. He wanted to close the door, but at this moment, a grim white hand suddenly reached in and blocked the door. This white hand was made entirely of ice and snow, and was covered with icicles. Maureen looked up in surprise, and then froze for a moment. A snowman with empty eyes was staring at him through the glass window of the box. These eyes scared Maureen. Maureen didn't know if it was right to use the word snowman to describe this guy who suddenly appeared, but the other's face was covered with snow, and his facial features could be vaguely seen, but the eye sockets on his face were like two gloomy black holes. Very creepy. Found you. Just when Maureen was surprised, the snowman suddenly showed a weird smile, and a pair of cold eyes suddenly appeared in his empty eye sockets, as if they had suddenly opened, revealing a cold light, staring at Maureen. The latest novel is published on 69 Shuba. Crash. The door of Maureen's carriage was completely opened, and he could see the man in front of him clearly. The man was surrounded by snow and wind, as if he was deliberately using the snow and wind to cover his appearance. But in his left hand, he was holding a brown magic wand, pointing at Maureen. Crazy Ice breathless. Swish. A black light shot out from the tip of the magic wand, and Maureen was shocked. His reaction was already quite fast. He jumped to the side and dodged the black light, and hit the chair opposite. Doi screamed in panic, jumped into Maureen's arms, and got into Maureen's pocket. What the hell? Maureen almost didn't react. The black light hit the cake on the table, and the whole table was covered with a layer of black frost, as if it was frozen. Maureen had no idea who this weirdo who suddenly appeared was and why he attacked him as soon as they met, But he didn't care about that. He raised his wand and shouted, "Flames!" A burst of flames spurted out and swept towards the other person. The flames instantly filled the entire carriage, and the rolling heat waves dispelled the frost, but the weirdo just flicked his wand, and a black light turned into a shield and appeared in front of him. The flames summoned by Maureen were blocked by the black light. Not only that, all the flames condensed in the air and were frozen. Then, with a snap, the frozen flames turned into fragments. "It's useless, you're just a first-year student." The weirdo sneered and raised his wand to Maureen again. "I have to go on a long trip these days. I will post 2 chapters first. If I can catch up with the 3rd chapter, I will post it in the evening. If I can't catch up, I will post 2 chapters. Chapter 105, Chaos on the Train. Maureen didn't understand why such a person suddenly appeared on the Hogwarts train, but he didn't have time to think about it. This guy started to attack right away, and he couldn't just sit there and wait for death. Break into pieces. The space was too small, and Maureen didn't have the ability to operate. He swung his wand and cast a crushing spell on the ceiling of the carriage. Suddenly, a hole was blown out of the iron sheet of the carriage, and the lights on it fell down. The weirdo didn't notice that Maureen would do this, and he was hit by the lights. He screamed and stepped aside. Maureen swung his wand again. Heavy smoke. Thick smoke sprayed out from his wand, covering the entire carriage and blocking the view. He took advantage of the weirdo's inattention and got out from the gap next to him and came to the corridor. Then he fired a few petrification spells at the back again and created a lot of smoke. "What are you yelling for?" Maureen turned his head and saw a head poking out of the toilet on the train. It was Carlo Lestrange. He was just using the toilet and smiled at Maureen, who was running away. "Why are you here again? Is someone chasing you, Maureen?" "Dementors." Maureen was panting and had no time to pay attention to Carlo. He continued to cast the smoke spell. The magic he knew was very simple and not very aggressive. The school would not teach them first-year students to advanced combat magic. He usually learned some very simple spells such as moving, levitation, and repair. Facing this evil monster who attacked him without saying a word, these spells were completely useless. "Maureen, you made the corridor so smoky. You will be punished." Carlo raised his hand and waved the smoke, looking at Maureen contemptuously. "Just wait, I will tell your dean about this." But before he finished speaking, a voice came from the smoke behind him. "Where are you going? You little brat, come back with me obediently." The strange man covered in ice and snow slowly walked over from the smoke created by Maureen, and then glanced coldly at Carlo, who was standing at the door of the toilet. "Who is it? Are you sick to play tricks with such a low voice?" Carlo was startled by the voice and was very annoyed. He turned around dissatisfied, and then saw this weird man, and the expression on his face suddenly froze. "Ah!" Carlo screamed in horror. His voice was very sharp, and there was no longer the smug look that mocked Maureen just now. He leaned towards the toilet next to him, and fell into the toilet with an unstable look. He kept kicking his feet and slammed the door of the toilet. "Ignorant fool!" The weird man ignored Carlo at all and continued to walk towards Maureen. At this time, the sound of ice suddenly sounded under Maureen's feet. The wind and snow around froze the floor and walls of the train. The speed of ice formation was faster than Maureen's running speed. Finally, a thick ice wall condensed in front. Maureen had no time to stop and crashed into the ice wall. Maureen touched his head and cried out in pain. It was not a good thing to crash into the ice wall created by the weirdo. He touched his head in pain and still didn't understand what happened. In this era, basically no wizards would attack students on the Hogwarts train, because the train was specially equipped with orders from the Ministry of Magic as security work, and the train attendants were all experienced adult wizards. But from just now to now, Maureen didn't see any orders at all. Many students in the distance seemed to be shouting in panic, but there was no student in the carriages behind. There was only Maureen alone, and no one could help him. "You can't run away." This weirdo who suddenly attacked the train seemed to come to find Maureen on purpose, and now he used an ice wall to block Maureen's way forward. "Shatter into pieces." Maureen pointed at the ice wall in front and shouted, but the ice wall only cracked a little, not broken. His spell was not enough to break the magic cast by an adult wizard. His wand summoned a flame, but the ice wall would not melt so quickly. "Are you still struggling? Little brat, don't make trouble for yourself." A red light shot out from the smoke behind him, dispersing the smoke created by Maureen. The weirdo was surrounded by wind and snow. His wand emitted a black light again, almost hitting Maureen's shoulder. Damn it. Maureen pushed open the carriage next to him, got in, quickly inserted the door lock, and pointed at the door lock to cast a sticking spell, which could temporarily resist the door opening spell. Maureen really hoped that he could learn the ability of apparition at this time. At least he could apparition away from this ghost place immediately. But the weirdo had already walked to the door and sneered through the glass. Lock yourself in a cell, huh? You think a small door can stop you? Naive kid. The door of the entire carriage was once again covered by low-temperature ice and snow. The black ice froze the door tightly, followed by a loud bang. Boom. The entire door was blown into pieces. The weirdo stepped in and grabbed the back collar of Maureen's clothes with one hand. Have the Aurors gone home for vacation? Maureen quickly took off his coat and turned to shout at the man, Expelliarmus. The weirdo was hit by Maureen's spell, and the wand in his hand was obviously about to slip out of his hand, but he grabbed the wand again in a blink of an eye. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Maureen noticed that the brown wand was covered with a brown sheath to protect it. He had seen this kind of sheath in a magic equipment store before. It was said that it could block a certain degree of disarming spells and was very popular among wizards. Damn. It was so close. Maureen was secretly annoyed. He had rarely used this disarming spell before and was not very proficient in using it. The hidden wizard was also very experienced and had a quick reaction. There was also a sheath on his wand to prevent disarming spells, so he didn't give Maureen any chance. Good boy, you still have some tricks, but that's all. The weirdo laughed contemptuously and swung his wand again. The window of the train was instantly shattered. The blizzard outside rushed in through the window like a tide, instantly drowning Maureen. Then the snow began to make a creaking sound of ice. Flames are raging. Maureen only had time to cast a fire spell when he was submerged by the wind and snow. Fortunately, he had learned magic from Arnok recently and was very proficient in fire spells. His flames instantly wrapped around his whole body, isolating the ice and snow outside. Arnok taught him last week how to properly control the violent fire magic to prevent himself from being burned. These flames are like a layer of burning clothes, which are aggressive to the outside world, but can prevent himself from being burned. The tide of snow outside the window did not put out the flames all at once, but was blocked outside the flames. Maureen's flames even melted the ice and snow quickly. Crack. Crack. But the snow covering Maureen's body had begun to gradually turn into black ice. Maureen didn't know how to resist this black ice. His flames could no longer melt this black ice. In just a blink of an eye, Maureen was already wrapped in black ice. He had flames to resist, leaving a small space between his body and the black ice, but he couldn't move, and it was even difficult for him to turn around. You can use this childish fire magic, and you still want to resist me? The weirdo laughed. Chapter 106 Dragon Flame Cold Repellent. Why did you catch me? Maureen shouted in the black ice. He didn't know if this guy could hear what he said, but he at least wanted to find out why he was found in such a confused state. You will know soon. The weirdo didn't answer Maureen. He had already grabbed the black ice outside Maureen and dragged Maureen out of the carriage. He walked to the back of the train corridor. There were no students in the last few carriages. The weirdo threw Maureen rudely to the rear of the train. We have to clean up the traces. We can't let anyone catch us. The weirdo looked at Maureen and muttered to himself. After making sure that Maureen couldn't break free from his magic, he turned around and headed to the front of the train, as if to eliminate the black magic he had cast. What should I do now? Maureen was getting more and more anxious. This unknown wizard had covered himself with ice and snow to hide his tracks. Now he had to deal with the traces of magic he had cast. It was obvious that he was worried about something. Once this guy cleaned up the scene, who knows where Maureen would be taken and what he would encounter. Maureen didn't want to be kidnapped for no reason. In a panic, he suddenly remembered the dragon flame cold repellent that Arnak gave him last time. The first time he drank a big sip, his whole body was smoking and the flames he cast were extremely terrifying. If he could drink another sip now, he would definitely be able to cast a powerful flame to break this damn black ice. Doi, if you understand me, help me take out a small bottle from my pants pocket. It's the dragon flame cold repellent. Maureen said anxiously. Maureen didn't know if Doi understood, but there was nothing he could do now. He used the flames to create a slightly movable space in himself, but he couldn't stretch out his hands. Doi. Doi. Doi quickly got out of Maureen's pocket, took out a piece of candy, and looked at Maureen with his tail wagging. It's not candy, it's a bottle. Maureen said quickly. Doi shrank back and held out another chocolate bar. It's not food, it's drink, glass bottle, potion. Maureen was extremely helpless. Doi crawled into Maureen's pocket again, and this time it was holding the small bottle in its little hand. Fortunately, Maureen always carried the small bottle with him, and this time it just came in handy. Yes, put it in my mouth, Maureen said happily. Doi crawled along Maureen's clothes to Maureen's chin, and used 2 small claws to put the bottle directly into Maureen's mouth. Cork! Cork! Maureen hurriedly used his teeth to hold the bottle, but did not swallow it. Doi tilted his head, blinked, changed the direction of the bottle, pointed the bottom of the bottle at Maureen, and continued to put it into Maureen's mouth. Don't turn the bottle around, pull out the brown cork. Maureen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Doi didn't seem to fully understand what he said. Doi blinked again, and this time seemed to understand what Maureen meant, bit off the cork with his fangs, and then pushed the bottle into Maureen's mouth. However, at this moment, there was a sudden roar of anger and the sound of magic spells from the distant train. He vaguely heard someone shouting, "Hurry up, he's still in the carriage, don't let him run away. Block the train." Swish! Swish! Maureen could hear the sound of apparition in the train. It seemed that the Aurors from the Ministry of Magic had arrived. It was obvious that there was a commotion on the train, which must have alarmed the Aurors. At this time, the train also slowly began to slow down and gradually stopped. Maureen breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that he should not need to drink this kind of thing. Just as he was about to ask Doi to put away the Dragon Flame anti-cold potion, with a swish, the man surrounded by wind and snow had already apparated to Maureen's side, grabbed Maureen, and was about to apparate with Maureen. This time Maureen did not hesitate and drank a mouthful of the Dragon Flame anti-cold potion. After taking a mouthful of the Dragon Flame anti-cold potion, Maureen's blood began to flow rapidly. The hot breath seemed to make his blood boil, and his clothes became hot and even burned. The flames are raging. Maureen didn't even use his wand to cast the fire spell this time. He felt a wave of heat in his body that couldn't wait to burst out. The flames that had protected him suddenly surged, roaring and screaming wildly. With a bang, the black ice that wrapped Maureen was instantly torn apart. What? The weirdo covered in wind and snow couldn't dodge in time and was hit by the ice chips he created. The rolling heat waves overturned him and he fell heavily in the corner of the carriage, breaking the glass of the carriage. Don't think I'm so easy to bully. Maureen's throat seemed to be filled with flames, and his voice was mighty and vigorous. The terrifying flames on his body turned into a violent fire dragon, rolling around him, and even wantonly ignited the entire carriage, igniting everything he encountered, whether it was iron or glass. They were all engulfed by flames. The latest novel is published on the 69th book bar. Crazy Ice Breathless. The weirdo climbed up from the corner, picked up the magic wand and fired a strong black light at Maureen's flame. The black light exuded a bone-chilling chill, trying to extinguish Maureen's flame, but the black light failed this time. It failed to suppress Maureen's flame. On the contrary, the black ice and snow he created were also ignited by the flame. Boom! The fire dragon roared violently, and the steaming heat wave blew up the glass of the last carriage. The flames poured out from the window, as if a huge explosion had occurred inside the carriage. The blizzard in the sky could not cover these crazy flames. The snowflakes were evaporated as soon as they fell. Maureen was also startled. He tried to control the flames, but the flames seemed to escape his control and began to run wildly. The weirdo also looked very shocked. The power of the flames was far beyond his imagination. He did not expect Maureen to cast such a terrifying flame. What kind of flame is this? The weirdo climbed up in horror. The flames had already rushed towards him, as if to devour him. He roared, swung his wand, and a red light was emitted, forming a shield, but the shield was swallowed by Maureen's flames again and continued to rush towards him. How could you summon such a flame? The wind and snow used to conceal the identity of the weirdo had evaporated, revealing a black cloak, and at this time the aura outside had rushed over from a distance, and the blue light covered the flames. Unforgivable. He actually burned the train. An aura kept swinging his wand, and a blue water shield floated over, trying to extinguish the flames, but the flames only hit once and broke the aura's water shield. Damn it. You wait. The man saw the aura approaching. He didn't dare to stay any longer, and was forced to retreat by the flames. He stumbled and hit the door panel. He yelled and got up, spun on the spot, and with a bang in the air, the whole person disappeared in the carriage. Before Maureen could breathe a sigh of relief, The horrible flames made him feel a little overwhelmed. The flames in front of him were too strange. He couldn't protect himself from being burned like controlling ordinary flames. He was wrapped in the last carriage. The corridor leading to other carriages had long been occupied by crazy flames. Chapter 107 The Unquenchable Flame. The flames surrounded Maureen. He was thinking about how to leave the fire scene. Then Maureen found that although the uncontrolled flames were raging everywhere, they did not rush towards him, but bypassed him. The whole carriage was full of flames, except where he was standing. He hesitated for a moment, took a step forward, and the flames also stepped back. Maureen was delighted and hurriedly started to run to the carriage in front. The uncontrolled flame seemed to have consciousness, always making way for Maureen in time, but with a click, the floor of the carriage in front had been burnt to ashes and collapsed, revealing a huge hole, blocking his steps forward, and he could not move forward. Fortunately, the train was stopped at this time. Maureen jumped out of the window next to him, rolled onto the snow, away from the carriage, and retreated to a tree not far from the train track. At this time, 7 or 8 wizards were shouting around the last carriage that was on fire. They kept firing water spells, and the water fell towards the last carriage like a waterfall, but all the water was evaporated by the flames without exception, and could not put out Maureen's flames at all. Maureen climbed up from the snow with some surprise, and looked at the wizards who were trying every means to put out the fire, and was a little confused. Is my flame so difficult to put out? What are you Aurors doing? Don't you say that all wizard exam certificates have reached excellent levels? He remembered that the last time his flames got out of control, Arnold just pulled out his wand and waved it to absorb the flames, but the Aurors in front of him seemed to be helpless against the flames. Separate this carriage, don't let the fire spread to the third carriage, and quickly evacuate all the students from the train. A tall wizard commanded. The fire summoned by Maureen had spread to the last second carriage. He fired a super strong cutting spell, splitting the third carriage in half from the air, blocking the flames. But the flames still couldn't be controlled. There was a tendency to burn more and more fiercely. The rails were burning. If this continued, I'm afraid the flames would ignite those carriages along the rails. What kind of black magic is this? Damn it! Cut the rails quickly. Has the conductor woken up? Ask him to drive the train further away. The Aurors waved their wands in a hurry and shouted to arrange a firefighting plan. Dark magic. Maureen raised his eyebrows slightly. How could he be considered a black magic when he simply cast a fire spell? This was obviously just a normal spell. But Maureen found that he seemed to be unable to control these flames. He only knew how to set fires but not how to put them out. God knows how to deal with these flames. Right. Arnold. Maureen hurried to a bush beside the train track and took out parchment and a pen from his pocket with great effort. He looked around and wanted to see where he was so that Arnold could appear to the rescue, but he had no idea where he was in the wilderness, and Arnold couldn't appear either, so he could only write, Mr. Alton, my fire is out of control and has set the Hogwarts train on fire. The Aurors don't seem to know how to put it out. How did you deal with the fire last time? Maureen waited for 2 minutes, and the parchment began to shake. Arnold's sloppy handwriting appeared on the paper. Why is it out of control again? Did you drink the Dragon Flame anti-cold potion again? That's your fire. You can control it. Use the transfiguration spell. The spell is flame transfiguration. Shrink it and suck it back into your wand. Draw a triangle with your wand and shake it twice. Maureen didn't know if he could do it. The fire over there was still burning, and thick smoke was billowing. The Aurors didn't find Maureen. Maureen sneaked around in the snow and found a stone that the Aurors could not see. He pointed his wand at the flames and drew a triangle according to Arnold's instructions. He shook it twice and said, Flame transformation. A faint light spurted out from Maureen's wand. He soon felt a vague connection extending from his wand to the restless flames. These uncontrolled flames were originally like ferocious and uncontrolled beasts, but at this time, they seemed to be tied around the neck by Maureen's wand with a rope and began to stabilize. It actually worked. Maureen felt very magical. This feeling was very strange. He seemed to be taming a manic fire dragon with his wand. This was an unprecedented experience. How about turning into a firebird? Maureen imagined Arnold's magic that day in his mind. He also planned to make a firebird and let it fly around to see if it could be more flexible. Anyway, the bad guys were scared away, the train had burned down and could not be saved, and the Aurors had no time to deal with him. taking this opportunity to practice. It was a cool thing to think about. Life always has to be happy in the midst of hardship. Maureen has always been optimistic. Under Maureen's control, the flames on the train twisted and suddenly soared up and rushed into the sky, acting recklessly, as if trying to transform, but failed. Many students had already run down from the train, and saw the flames were about to surge, and they all screamed in panic. "Hurry up and find a way. This flame is going to run wild." One of the Aurors shouted in shock and anger. Maureen found that the flames were difficult to control, and he accidentally made the Aurors and classmates more nervous. He shrugged his shoulders and muttered, "It's not going wild, it's not going wild, don't worry, I'm here." Maureen shook his wand and tried to pull the out-of-control flames. The flames gradually turned from the train into a thin line of fire and drilled back into his wand along the ground. This process was very slow. It was not easy to control so many flames. Maureen was only a first-year student and his control over magic was still limited. It took him about 5 minutes to retract the flames, which was much worse than what Arnold had done. Fortunately, it was still snowing heavily at this time. The snowflakes obscured the sight of the Aurors. When the flames were retracted, they were not noticed by the Aurors. "The flames have shrunk." "Good. Who did it? What magic did you use to subdue the flames created by the dark magic?" "Phil, did you do it?" the tall wizard shouted loudly. "It wasn't me, Daler. I used the water spell, but it didn't work. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar." "Balancy, did you eliminate it?" "I used the weakening charm and the transfiguration charm, but it didn't work. It wasn't me who eliminated it." 7 or 8 Aurors surrounded the carriage that had been burned into an iron frame and asked each other. The leading Auror Dale asked everyone, but none of his men were the heroes who successfully subdued the flames. "Strange. So many of us can't deal with these flames. How come these dark magic flames suddenly disappeared?" Dale looked serious. As the captain of the Auror duty team, he often had to deal with a lot of dark magic and had rich experience in dealing with dark magic, but this time the fire magic made them completely helpless. This was not a simple matter. "This is not dark magic. If you drink a sip of Dragon Flame anti-cold potion, you might also lose control." Maureen didn't have time to care about these Aurors. He kept muttering in his heart that these Aurors were short-sighted. When he put away his wand and was about to run over to the evacuated students, an Auror named Phil suddenly came over and saw Maureen. "Maureen, what are you doing here?" Phil was there when he dealt with Pre and Diagon Alley. He also knew Maureen's grandfather Alton and was very familiar with Maureen. "Oh, Mr. Phil, what a coincidence. I mean, I'm just passing by to join in the fun," Maureen said uncertainly. Boom. The carriage behind him that had been burned to a frame was blown by the wind and completely turned into a pile of ashes. Maureen turned his head to look at the pile of train ashes, swallowed his saliva, then spread his hands to Phil with an innocent look, and continued very sincerely, "Really?" Chapter 108 Magical Trace Identification Department. "Phil, what's wrong?" Dale hurried over and asked, then saw Maureen and frowned. "Dale, this is Alton's grandson, Maureen," Phil said. Dale stared at Maureen and said in a muffled voice, "This fire shouldn't be set by you, right?" "Dale, he's just a first-grade kid." Phil looked at Dale and said, "How can a first-grade kid perform black magic? What are you thinking?" "Sorry, I was too anxious." Dale kicked the snow and looked particularly annoyed. He was still angry because he didn't catch the arsonist. Maureen didn't know whether he should admit that he set the fire. In the end, he decided not to say it. After all, this matter was too strange and he should not let others know if he could. "Maureen, were you in the last car just now?" Phil asked seriously. "Yes, just now there was a man chasing me, and then I ran to the last carriage. His magic was too powerful, and I was no match for him, and then, well, it caught fire." "Yes, it caught fire, and you just happened to arrive." When Maureen was still thinking about how to continue, Phil interrupted him and helped him to continue. He saw us coming, so he used black magic to set the train on fire, trying to divert attention and take the opportunity to escape, right? "Oh, that's right. That's it." Maureen nodded seriously in agreement. "The flame is so big, it warms this winter." After a while, Maureen said innocently, "This is not black magic, right? It should be just an ordinary out-of-control flame, right?" "This is not an ordinary flame." Daler's face looked very solemn. This flame is more terrible than fiend fire. We all know how to deal with black magic like fiend fire, but I have never seen this kind of flame. It is too dangerous. Fiend fire? My flame. I mean, this flame is more terrible than fiend fire. Maureen was shocked. Fiend fire was a kind of fire magic with a bad reputation. It could devour everything. But the fire that burned the carriage was just his out-of-control magic. How could it be scarier than fiend fire? Maureen really couldn't figure it out. He asked, "Who was that man just now? Do you know him? Why did he want to catch me? That's what I want to know. His magic is very advanced. Some traces have been eliminated. Maybe someone from the Magic Trace Identification Department needs to come and identify the magic traces." "You said he was catching you?" Dale asked. "Yes, he wanted to catch me. I don't know him at all," Maureen said. "That's weird." Dale looked at Maureen. Phil remembered something and said to the other Aurors who came over, "It's possible that this guy is in cahoots with Pretty. Do you remember Pretty a few months ago? He was caught by Maureen at that time." Maureen was also reported on the front page of the Daily Prophet. Normally Maureen can't do anything at school, so now he's here for revenge. But how did he know I was going home? Maureen was puzzled. A criminal would risk his life to hijack a Hogwarts train just to take revenge on me, a first-year student. That's really hard to believe. Phil nodded, and then asked, "Did you see what he looked like?" "No, he was covered in snow, like a snowman, and I couldn't see clearly. Also, how did he get on the train, and where's the conductor?" Maureen asked. "Snowman. This guy is really good at disguise." Phil spat and said, "The conductor was knocked unconscious. That bastard attacked them. If Stephen, who was on duty on the train today, hadn't launched a magic position before he fell unconscious, we would never have been able to get here. So that's how it is." Maureen heard from his grandfather that Aurors have a special connection between each other, and they can immediately notify their partners when they encounter danger during a mission. Fortunately, Stephen guided the other Aurors to operate directly over, otherwise the entire train would be silly. But then Maureen thought again, that's not right, it's useless for these Aurors to come, didn't the fire put out by itself? But then he realized that he had set the fire accidentally, and the Aurors who came over at least scared that guy away, so it wasn't in vain. Now the train has destroyed 2 carriages. I think we need to find a way to send these students back quickly. Oh damn. How can this woman have such a keen sense of smell? Why does she always know something is going to happen? And how did she know that the accident happened in this place? Dale looked up and saw a female reporter with bright red lipstick running in the snow in the distance. He cursed inwardly and said to the other Aurors, "Go and stop her quickly. Don't let her talk nonsense anymore. Maureen, you follow Phil and don't accept the interview of that crazy woman." Maureen also saw Judy Skeeter. He remembered that after accepting the interview with this woman last time, he became a tool to discredit the Ministry of Magic. He didn't have a good impression of her. That report was completely exaggerated and fabricated. But it was impossible to stop this witch, because there were many students on the train who were going home for Christmas. Judy had plenty of opportunities to visit each student's home for interviews. The Aurors began to clean up the scene. The people from the Magic Trace Identification Department had already rushed over and checked the traces of black magic in each carriage. The wizards' identification methods were very interesting to Maureen. A yellow-haired magic appraiser was actually holding a 1-meter-long slug. The slug was crawling around on the iron sheet outside the carriage, as if looking for something, leaving a large pool of mucus behind it. Another wizard was moving a 2-meter-long giant octopus with a magic wand. The octopus was swimming in a huge magic bubble, and its tentacles kept reaching out to touch the carriage. There was also a wizard holding a cage. He opened the door of the cage, and a bunch of red flies flew out and buzzed into the carriage. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. What are these slugs and octopuses for? And those flies are disgusting. Maureen couldn't help but turn around and ask Phil. They are specially trained to detect traces of magic. The mucus of the mutant slug can show the color of magic within 2 hours. Different magic will leave different colors on the mucus. According to the color, we can know what magic was cast here. The tentacles of the giant octopus can absorb the residual magic. We can let it reproduce the spells it cast. And those pig-nosed flies have a very keen sense of smell. If you sneeze 10 miles away, they can find you. Phil explained patiently, don't underestimate them. Sometimes you can cast a small repair spell and they can detect it and find your breath. This is how we track dark wizards. Phil explained. Maureen nodded thoughtfully. No wonder the guy who caught him just now had to rush back to eliminate the traces of magic he cast. It turns out that he is very familiar with the methods of the Ministry of Magic and has a strong awareness of entire reconnaissance. But Maureen was aware of the out-of-control flames and said uneasily, "Can they identify who set the fire?" "If we're lucky, they can." Phil said seriously, "When the results come out, we can catch the arsonist who cast a black magic." Maureen laughed dryly twice. He was sure that he didn't like these flies, octopuses and slugs very much. While the magic identification department was taking action, other Aurors were contacting various units. Before the Hogwarts train was identified, no one could take their luggage away. They built several large tents on the spot for students to go in and avoid the wind and snow. Judy Skeeter protested dissatisfiedly, shouting the slogan that wizard families have the responsibility to know the truth and asked to interview, but was rudely stopped by the Aurors. She also clamored to report threats such as Aurors concealed the truth. The Ministry of Magic abused its power for personal gain and covered the sky with one hand, but the Aurors didn't care. What a silly woman. She seems to be able to report positively about us just because we let her in. Phil spat. Judy often slandered us in the Daily Prophet. Their Aurors were basically described as soft shrimps without shells, useless trash, etc. Half an hour later, Daler came over with a serious face and said, "The results of the magic trace identification are out. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 109 Chaotic Scene. Maureen had been beside Phil the whole time, and he immediately looked up at Dale. "Have you found the scent of that dark wizard?" Phil asked. Dale shook his head. "No, that guy is very smart. He eliminated all the traces of magic that could be noticed, and as for the last carriage, he used evil black magic to burn it cleanly, so it can't be found at all." "Oh, that's great." Maureen breathed a sigh of relief. "Huh?" Phil and Dale both stared at Maureen. "I mean," Maureen said in a hurry with great sorrow, "too bad. He should pay the price." Maureen waved his fist, his expression serious. "He will definitely pay the price. Dare to hijack the Hogwarts train, and use black magic to burn the carriages. The Ministry of Magic does not allow such people to exist." Dale said angrily. "The dark wizard escaped in front of them and created a fire that could not be extinguished, which greatly damaged the dignity of the Aurors. Dale didn't even know what this black magic was. The train can't run anymore, Phil. Go build a temporary fireplace. I've asked the director of the Flu Network office at the Ministry of Magic to temporarily connect the Flu Network. These students need to be escorted directly to London Station to avoid any more accidents. Students who don't know how to use flu powder can use portkeys. Students who don't like portkeys must also use portkeys. This is an emergency and they have no say. For those Muggle-born students, see if you can find some Muggle rockets to wait at London Station to escort them and their non-magic Muggle parents home safely. These Muggles especially can't make any mistakes, otherwise things will get even worse." "What's a rocket?" Phil asked puzzled. "How should I know? Don't Muggles take rockets when they travel long distances?" Daler impatiently threw down this sentence and left in a hurry. Phil grabbed his hair and asked Maureen in confusion, "Your grandfather Alton is in charge of the Department of Prohibition of the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts. Did he say what a rocket is?" Maureen didn't understand these Muggle things either. "I don't know. It should also be a means of transportation, right? Anyway, you can ask those Muggle-born classmates." Then he memorized the word rocket in his heart. If the final exam of the Muggle Studies class asked what means of transportation Muggles used to go out, he could write about rockets. It's great to learn as you grow older. "Which way are you going to get to London?" "I have to ensure your safety." Phil asked. "I can do either. How about you operate and take me to London Station and then come back?" Maureen suggested. Phil nodded. "Okay, it will only take a few seconds. Then go find your luggage. I'll build a temporary fireplace first. You can come find me in 10 minutes. Phil ran towards the big tent. Maureen saw him take out a toy-like fireplace model from his pocket. It was only half the size of a palm. He threw the toy fireplace to the ground and waved his wand. The fireplace was directly enlarged and a raging flame was burning in the fireplace. Maureen struggled to climb to the carriage and found his luggage. Fortunately, the luggage was not damaged, but there was a layer of ice and slug mucus. It was estimated that his luggage had also been checked, which made him feel a little disgusted. He took out his wand to remove the mucus from the suitcase, and then cast a lightning spell, pulled the luggage and quickly jumped off the train to find Phil. Phil was loudly asking a Muggle-born student how to find a rocket. The student looked a little confused. Forget it, forget about it for now. Hurry up and take your luggage. Students who have never used flu powder are not allowed to use it. This is not the time to try it. Go to the door key over there. Phil directed everyone. If the flu powder is accidentally used at the wrong place, it is very likely to go to someone else's house. They can't take the risk of sending students to the wrong place, so only experienced students are allowed to use it. There were hundreds of students at the scene, huddled together in a mess. Everyone was noisy and frightened. Some people couldn't even find their luggage. Some first-year girls were scared and cried loudly, saying that they couldn't find their cats or chocolate frog cards. What a bad day. Phil shouted dryly. Students were not so easy to obey. Many people were running around to find their luggage. Some students' luggage was blown up by the wind and snow, and their books and clothes were scattered all over the floor. When such an accident happened, Phil couldn't just scold the students, so he became quite annoyed. Fortunately, you are a relatively normal child. Phil patted Maureen's shoulder and looked at a little girl squatting on the ground crying. The caterpillar that the little girl raised had just frozen to death. She cried very sadly and refused to listen to anyone's advice. Phil sighed helplessly. Maureen shrugged his shoulders. He was a relatively bold person and would not panic because of these things, not to mention that the dark wizard just came for him. Then hold your luggage tightly, we're leaving. Phil grabbed Maureen's arm and gently pulled it. Maureen and Phil were like being squeezed into a water pipe. With a pop, they appeared at London Station. The station was already crowded with parents picking up their children. The train was delayed for several hours and everyone was very anxious. Some Aurors here were explaining the situation to the parents. In order to avoid more chaos at the scene and other dark wizards mixing into the scene to cause damage, the Aurors did not allow parents to go to the scene of the accident to pick up their children in person. The latest novels are first published on 69shushu.com. I'll take you to find Alton. If the dark wizard is here to find you, I can only feel relieved if you return to Alton. Phil took Maureen through the crowd responsibly and soon found Alton, who was looking around in the crowd. Alton's bald head was shining in the crowd, like a beacon, and it was easy to identify. Maureen, are you okay? Alton asked Maureen while holding her. It's okay, Grandpa. Maureen said. Alton breathed a sigh of relief, and then asked seriously, Phil, what happened? I heard from Diego that the train over there exploded, causing numerous casualties, and now all the parents are protesting. Don't believe that rumor-mongering guy. Alton, take Maureen home first. I have to go back to deal with this scene, and I'll have a chance to explain everything to you. I'll see if I can apparat a few more students over here. It's a mess over there, and some students are against apparat. Last year I took a little boy, and he vomited all over me after apparat, but luckily Maureen didn't. I like this kid. After saying this, Phil turned half a circle on the spot and disappeared into the air. The fireplace at the train station was crowded with parents picking up their children. From time to time, students came out of the fireplace, and some Aurors also apparated students back. As for those students who came back through the portkeys, most of them had 5 people per portkey, and as soon as they appeared, they rolled on the ground, their luggage fell out, and many students cursed and complained. Alton touched Maureen's head and said, Fortunately you are okay. Let's go home quickly. He grabbed Maureen. He didn't like apparition, but this time he apparated directly with Maureen and left the station. Chapter 110 Christmas for 2. Did that wizard really come after you? Alton checked Maureen's body carefully as soon as he got home, and found that Maureen was fine except that his clothes were a little burnt. Maureen also honestly told Alton what happened on the train. It should be. He probably searched one carriage after another and used magic on me when he saw me. Maureen had nothing to hide from his grandfather. Alton looked serious, and his brows frowned deeper and deeper. This matter must be investigated clearly. Maureen then said uncertainly, Grandpa, if I say that I set the fire, do you believe it? I believe you set the fire, But your flame was transformed by the other party's black magic, so even the Aurors couldn't put it out. That guy is really crazy. Don't let me catch him. He dared to cause trouble for my grandson. Alton pulled his beard and said with gritted teeth. Maureen didn't know how to explain. There was only half of the bottle of dragon flame cold repellent left. He wanted to tell his grandfather about his encounter with Arnok, but in the end he held back. Alton had already gone to write a letter to contact the Ministry of Magic. Maureen returned to the bedroom and took out the parchment. He found that the parchment was jumping and a line of words appeared on it. It was Arnok's handwriting. Is the matter resolved? Maureen took out a pen and wrote on the paper, Mr. Arnok, why is my flame out of control? Why can't those Aurors put out my flame? Did I use black magic? A minute later, the parchment jumped. It's not black magic, it's that you are special. Others can't deal with the out-of-control flame. Try not to lose control. Is it special because of my eyes? Maureen wrote. You will know in the future. Well, I'm going to spend Christmas somewhere else. The parchment is too far away and the magic will weaken, so we can't contact each other. If there's anything, we can talk after Christmas. Arnok always refused to tell him too much. Maureen put away the parchment, lay on the bed, and looked at the ceiling. There were a lot of strange things recently. People kept disappearing in school, and outside the school, there were people who wanted to make trouble for him. This was really a weird feeling. Could it be Professor Charles? Maureen thought. The professors at the school must know which students have gone home, but he denied it. The man's words and deeds were too different from Professor Charles. Or was it Professor Charles who was deliberately pretending? Maureen walked to the window and looked out. Dusk fell and the night began to cover the earth. The next morning, it was still snowing outside. The Muggle community was already covered with snow. Many Muggle children were playing snowballs there. Aren't parents coming back for Christmas? Maureen sat at the table, eating turkey bread, and asked in a faint voice. Alton patted Maureen on the shoulder. They are very busy. Sorry, Maureen. Busy for 4 years, right? Maureen's parents were already blurred in his memory. If it weren't for the photos in the album, he couldn't even remember what his parents looked like. Since Maureen was 7 years old, his parents left and never came back. They only wrote a few letters occasionally, and Maureen was not interested in the content of the letters. Alton put down the meat sauce and forced a smile. This is how it is when studying ancient magic. There's nothing I can do about it. They don't know that I was selected for the Quidditch team at school, nor do they know how I am doing in school, let alone that I was attacked on the way home. Is that right? Maureen lowered his head and stared at his knife and fork in a daze. Every Christmas, he hoped that his parents would come back, but every year he was disappointed. He felt very bad. How could he be busy at work for 4 years without even a vacation? Sometimes he envied the Muggles in the Muggle community where he lived. Although they didn't know magic, at least they could be with their parents, holding hands, laughing and talking. Maureen didn't. He had forgotten what that felt like. Alton said quickly, I wrote to tell them that they are worried about you. Really? I promise. Who wouldn't worry about their own children? Let's not talk about this. Let's plan how to decorate the house later. Do you want cannons and fireworks or a Christmas tree that will become Santa Claus? I can go buy a sleigh. How about we ski at home? Yes. Maureen responded casually. He knew that his grandfather would buy him everything and would not be stingy with his pocket money, but he just couldn't get interested. Some things could not be bought with money. I'm full. Maureen threw the dishes into the sink. The brush in the sink had automatically jumped up to wash the dishes. He washed his hands and turned to walk towards his bedroom. Maureen, wait, what do you want? Tell Grandpa. Grandpa will buy it for you. We can buy a few reindeer, the kind that run around in Diagon Alley, or any fireworks you like, just set them off. Alton shouted. The latest novel is published on the 6th-9th book bar. But Maureen has already walked into his bedroom. Alton sighed, and the wrinkles on his face were squeezed together because of worry. He knew what Maureen wanted most. After all, Maureen was still an 11-year-old child, but he could not do anything about it. He had tried his best to give Maureen the best life, and there were many things he could not make up for. Alton's eyes were very dim, and he shook his head gently, with a sad face. Christmas should be a day for family reunion, not this kind of atmosphere. Maureen sat on the bed, looking at the photo frame on the desk. There was a photo of their family of 4 in the photo frame. At that time, Maureen was only 5 years old, riding on his father's neck. The photo frame could move. His father would throw him up from time to time, making him giggle. His mother looked at him gently beside him, and Alton was happy and smiled very satisfied. But that kind of life no longer existed a long time ago. Maureen was silent for a moment, then he put the photo frame down on the table, covered it with a book, not wanting to see his parents, and then he lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling in a daze. Even the most optimistic children have their own hurdles that they can't get over, and so does Maureen. After a while, Maureen remembered the look on Grandpa Alton's face. He stood up again, opened the bedroom door and walked out. The depressed look on his face had disappeared, and he said with a smile in his usual cheerful voice, "Grandpa, I'm ready. Let's go to Diagon Alley. I want to buy a lot of fireworks." Alton looked up and saw that Maureen had regained his usual mischievous look. He was also slightly stunned, and then nodded quickly. "Oh, okay, we'll go right away. Wait a minute, I'll go get a bag." Alton's wrinkles were all smoothed out. Maureen's reaction made him very happy. This was the look that should be on Christmas, not a sad face. He thought Maureen had figured it out, so he hurriedly put aside the unfinished breakfast, and went upstairs in those ugly Muggle slippers to get his bag. Maureen looked at his grandfather's cheerful and hurried steps, his eyes dazed. He didn't know what he was thinking, but habitually suppressed those frustrated emotions. If his irresponsible parents didn't spend Christmas with him for 4 years, he would at least let his grandfather have a good Christmas. There is always someone who needs to be happy on Christmas, and Maureen thinks that person should be his grandfather. Chapter 111 False Reports. This time, Alton took Maureen to Diagon Alley and asked her to bring her wand. Even though minors were not allowed to use magic outside, there were exceptions in emergency situations, not to mention that there was someone outside who wanted to catch Maureen. "Follow me closely, don't get lost. If you see someone casting magic on you, fight back immediately. It's okay. Don't worry about not being able to cast magic outside of school. Protecting yourself is the most important thing." Alton looked around the leaky cauldron, trying to find someone he knew to inquire about the attack on the student train yesterday. Because Christmas was approaching, the leaky cauldron was decorated with many ribbons, and various stars were floating in the air. These stars would automatically float away when guests approached, and would not stain people. The whole bar was filled with the joy of Christmas. Maureen walked to the bar, where there was a copy of the Daily Prophet. As expected, the burning of the Hogwarts train had caused a sensation and occupied the headlines again. There were also photos of the scene. In the photos, the bright red flames ignited the last carriage and continued to burn. Several Aurors were firing various fire-extinguishing spells, but to no avail. The title was shock. A violent explosion occurred on the Hogwarts train, causing heavy casualties among students. A dark day for the Christmas holiday. Heavy casualties? Has this reporter lost his bottom line to attract attention? Maureen muttered. Yesterday, the Dark Wizard only came to cause trouble for Maureen and did not attack other students. Those students were at most frozen and blushed, and cried like dead caterpillars. Maureen was almost kidnapped. He continued to read. Daily Prophet News on the 22nd, Hogwarts students were attacked by unknown dark wizards on their way home by train. The dark magic flames burned the entire carriage, causing students to be injured to varying degrees. More than a dozen Aurors failed to subdue the dark wizard, and they didn't even see the other side. The Aurors were also helpless against the fire created by the unknown wizard. The level of the Aurors was once again questioned by all parties. The Ministry of Magic not only failed to do its job, but also tried to conceal the truth and cover up a series of scandals. But the truth can never be hidden. A first-year student named Carlo Lestrange told us the whole story in person. Our reporter restored what happened at the time to the greatest extent possible. It was a snow monster. The dark wizard controlled more than a dozen snow monsters and attacked every carriage. Carlo Lestrange said confidently and frightenedly, "The snow monster wanted to strangle me at that time. If I hadn't cast a smoke spell to confuse the audience, I would have been captured." The Carlo who was interviewed was a descendant of the noble Lestrange family in the wizarding world. He was only in the first grade this year. He was able to think of using a smoke spell to create chaos and escape, which showed his wit and courage. You cast a smoke spell. Maureen felt funny. He also met Carlo at that time. This guy just came out of the toilet and fell into the toilet when he saw the wizard. He actually had the nerve to say that he cast a smoke spell. The smoke spell was when Professor Francis taught everyone how to correctly defend against the attack of stinging flies in the Defense Against the Dark Arts class, which was to use a smoke spell to confuse the audience. In the whole class, only Maureen's smoke spell was effective. Carlo's smoke spell could only spray out a light smoke, just like when a candle is blown out. It is true that shameless people are invincible. Below the Daily Prophet was a photo of Carlo, who looked particularly impressive. Maureen snorted disdainfully and continued reading. Carlo's bravery is worthy of learning from many students, but not all students can react as quickly as Carlo. A Ravenclaw girl named Maria said that the snow monster killed her good friend Corgi, but we did not hear any official statement mentioning Corgi. The Aurors of the Ministry of Magic issued a statement that no students were missing. It was obvious that they were deliberately covering up the fact that a student had died. This behavior made many parents very angry. We are trying to find the parents of Corgi and wait for them to ask the Ministry of Magic for an explanation. Below the news was a photo of a first-grade girl crying and sad. Maureen looked at the little girl in surprise. She was the little girl who cried and threw a tantrum yesterday because a caterpillar died and refused to listen to any advice. Did a student named Corgi really die? Alton was also beside Maureen, looking at the contents of the newspaper, and asked seriously, if it is true, then the matter is serious. I hope that the poor child's parents will not be too sad. Maureen shrugged her shoulders. To be honest, if that woman could be a little more normal, she would know that Corgi is a caterpillar. Alton nodded in sudden realization, and then said angrily, the news of that crazy woman is all nonsense. You can't believe a word. I almost forgot it. They went to Diagon Alley together. Every store in Diagon Alley was decorated with lights and had special promotions. Even the winter ice cream shop was holding an event. The ice cream they sold was specially eaten in winter. It had the taste of ice cream, but it tasted hot and was very popular. Alton took Maureen to Weasley's Trickster, where they sold all kinds of Christmas gifts, including indoor snowflake magic, shining fireworks and firecrackers, and all kinds of colorful Christmas trees. Some Christmas trees would produce apples or pineapples when touched, and they could be eaten. Hey, Mr. Walton, as usual, 50% off. George Weasley saw Alton from the crowd, walked over happily and shook hands with Alton. It was natural for George to know Alton. Before Alton retired, when the realized things in the theater were lost to the Muggle world, it was always Alton and Arthur who dealt with them, so George never neglected Alton. Thank you, George. Alton said with a smile. Oh, I recognize you, Maureen Walker. You helped subdue the gangsters in my store last time, right? George blinked at Maureen. You knew how to use smoke bombs and water balls last time, very smart. You are Alton's grandson, so I can give you some invisible smoke bombs and newly improved elastic water balls for free. George grabbed a handful of smoke bombs and elastic water balls from the counter next to him and handed them to Maureen. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Thank you, Mr. Weasley. Maureen liked the things here very much. He found that there were 2 more security guards at the door of the store and 3 shop assistants patrolling inside. Obviously, George had invested a lot of money to prevent the summer vacation from happening again. Then you can take your time to watch. I will talk to the cashier. George quickly went to do other things. The whole store was crowded with people. It was snowing everywhere, but these snowflakes were made by magic. They would not fall on people, nor would they make people feel cold. Many students in the store were amazed because 2 reindeer were pulling a sled, running around the wall. Behind the sled sat a customer who was trying it out and looked very excited. George is really good at inventing. It's a good idea for him to come up with a sled that can run on the wall. Alton exclaimed. Maureen was looking around, but suddenly his eyes froze and he saw a familiar figure in the crowd. Professor Charles. Chapter 112 Black Dragon Bile. Maureen didn't expect to see Professor Charles in this place. He remembered the snowman who attacked the Hogwarts train yesterday and came to find him. He suddenly felt something strange. Professor Charles looked up and saw Maureen. He walked over with a smile. Hello, Professor Charles. Maureen greeted without changing his expression. Hello, Maureen, the Hogwarts train was attacked yesterday. Are you okay? Professor Charles asked gently. I'm fine, Professor. Maureen then introduced, this is my grandfather. Grandpa, this is Professor Charles, my Muggle studies teacher. Alton stretched out his hand and shook hands with Professor Charles, and smiled. Oh, Professor Charles, my name is Alton Walker. I used to be an official in the Ministry of Magic's Misuse of Muggle Objects Department. I also have some research on Muggles. By the way, how is Maureen's Muggle Studies class going? I taught him a lot of Muggle knowledge. Maureen was embarrassed. He really hoped that his grandfather had not said this, because his grandfather's so-called research on Muggles was completely wrong in Maureen's view, otherwise he would not have been so confused in the Muggle Studies class. Professor Charles smiled and said politely, "Hello, Mr. Walker. Maureen is doing well in Muggle Studies, and he has a magical talent for painting." Professor Charles did not expose Maureen's shortcomings, nor did he offend Alton. His words and deeds were very gentlemanly. Yes, this child does have a talent for painting. When he was a child, he drew a spider on the wall. The spider crawled everywhere and even crawled into the toilet and drowned. Oh, I actually never really understood whether it was a spider or an ant. After all, he drew 8 legs and ran very fast. Alton touched Maureen's head and said with a smile, "Maureen only has a talent for painting, but no painting skills." The ant-like spider drowned in the toilet because the paint was dissolved by water. Alton continued, "By the way, Professor Charles, are you here to buy Christmas decorations too?" He always felt a little strange to see Professor Charles in this place. Professor Charles shook his head. "No, I'm here to buy some magic paints and magic canvases. There are some problems with this school's paintings, and I haven't completely repaired them. I have to rush back to school later. I'm spending Christmas at school this year." "Paintings again?" Maureen asked calmly. "Professor Charles, why don't you go to Hogsmeade to buy them? There's also a Weasley's Wheezes store there, right? Why did you come to Diagon Alley on purpose?" Professor Charles smiled and said, "Because I have to purchase some other things, which are not available in Hogsmeade." "Okay, then I'll leave first. Merry Christmas, Maureen, and Mr. Walker." "Merry Christmas, Professor," Maureen said. "Your professor looks very good. I've seen some Muggles dressed like him. He can almost perfectly disguise himself as a Muggle. He is indeed a qualified Muggle studies teacher," Alton said, looking at Professor Charles' back. "Maybe." Maureen also stared at Professor Charles. Professor Charles walked out of Weasley's Wheezes and apparated directly on the street. He couldn't apparate directly back to school, so it is very likely that he went back to Hogsmeade. "Grandpa, I'll go over there and take a look." Maureen thought for a moment, and then he ran to the cashier at the counter. The cashier was a smiling witch wearing a Santa hat, and looked approachable. When Maureen came, the witch with the Santa hat asked with a smile, "Little friend, what did you buy? Mr. Weasley just said that you only need to get a 50% discount on the things you bought." "Hello, I came to ask the gentleman in the suit what he bought just now. He is a professor in my school. I also want to buy the same things as him, is that okay?" Maureen said. "Wait a moment." The witch with the Santa hat did not doubt Maureen. She pulled over an account book from the side. There was a pen on the account book that was automatically recording accounts. She took the pen away, checked it, and said, "He bought a street brand magic paint, an automatic folding measuring brush, a Weasley original magic canvas, invisible ink, a universal eraser, and black dragon gall, that's all." "What is black dragon gall?" Maureen asked. The witch patiently explained, "Dark dragon gall is a new type of paint we have. We have just discovered that it can restrict the movement of people in the painting and prevent them from leaving the frame at will. This material has just been shipped from Romania. Professor Charles has ordered it from us a long time ago. We only sell it here. Do you need me to get it for you?" "No, I'll go find these things myself. Sorry for the trouble." Maureen walked towards Alton, who was looking at 2 lifelike reindeers carved from wood with interest. These reindeers were the things that could pull the sled on the wall. "Can't let the people in the painting leave the frame," Maureen thought as he walked. What exactly did Professor Charles want to do? Why did he want to restrict the people in the painting from leaving the frame? There were more and more questions in his mind. He was attacked in a strange way yesterday, and he met Professor Charles here again today. Maureen easily linked these two things together. After all, the only people who knew that he was going home for Christmas were the teachers at school. "Maureen, let's try this reindeer sleigh too. I'm also planning to buy some indoor snow to take back, what do you think?" Alton looked around among a pile of brown reindeers. The lifelike reindeer exhaled a wisp of white air from its nostrils, and its eyes blinked very cleverly. Maureen couldn't figure out these things. He looked at the festive atmosphere around him and put the matter aside for the time being. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Okay, Grandpa. Maureen helped Grandpa buy things to decorate for Christmas. She bought a lot of magical Weasley products and packed a fruit-bearing Christmas tree to take home. When everything was put into Alton's handbag, they left Weasley's trickster with satisfaction. On the way, Alton met an acquaintance from the Ministry of Magic, a staff member of the Ministry of Magic's field personnel department named Bloomer. Alton stopped the man and asked him about the accident on the Hogwarts train yesterday, especially whether the disguised dark wizard had been caught. Unfortunately, there was no trace of the dark wizard. We didn't catch anything. It's terrible. Alton, the Ministry of Magic received about 300 howlers this morning. The whole ministry was replaced by the roars of parents of students. The howlers that were not opened in time also exploded. Bloomer looked very annoyed. I also received a claim letter from Mundungus. He claimed that his nephew's arm was burned by black magic on the train and was being treated in St. Mungo's hospital. He demanded compensation of 1,000 galleons, but I checked and found that his nephew was only 7 years old and had not yet gone to school. That guy just wanted to take the opportunity to blackmail him. This shameless old bastard. By the way, I still have to go to St. Mungo's hospital to check on the injured students. I won't talk to you anymore. Bloomer paraded away. Alton looked at Maureen. I think I should take you to St. Mungo's hospital for a thorough examination. What if he cast some black magic on you and you didn't know it? Don't worry, Grandpa. Maureen smiled. I'm in good health. I scared that guy away. Yes, you are the best. Alton patted Maureen's shoulder and said helplessly. The grandfather and grandson walked towards the leaky cauldron and set off for home. Chapter 113 The Magic of Christmas. On Christmas Day for 2 people, Maureen decorated the house with her grandfather diligently like in previous years, hung the Christmas tree with colorful lights, and let magic snowflakes float everywhere in the house. Some fairies flapped their wings and flew around the Christmas tree. They also tried the magic reindeer sleighs themselves, running around the whole house. These reindeer sleighs can be on the table, sofa, sink. It will not knock things over, but will slide over anything. Even if the house is not a special ski resort, it can still run on the wall, ceiling and other places, and the space suddenly became larger. Alton also performed gravity reversal magic. On Christmas Day, their table was hung upside down on the ceiling, and dinner was also eaten on the ceiling. The two of them sat on the ceiling to eat, and everything was upside down, which looked particularly interesting. Countless magic fireworks bloomed everywhere in the room, and they did not go out for a long time, adding a bit of fun to Christmas. Maureen received many gifts. He has many relatives, and everyone sent him interesting magic items. Aunt Brooke gave him a sweater that can change color. There are 3 colors to choose from. Which color you want to wear depends on your mood. Hugo really stole a lot of magic items from his father's shop. He gave Maureen a lot of rare wolf shadow candies. When you peel off the candy wrapper, a lifelike wolf will jump out from it, which is thrilling. He also gave Maureen a magic folding box, just like the one James and his friends had, which can store a lot of things. Alton gave Maureen a flying broom. When Maureen opened the package, he was stunned. The Wind Eagle. Maureen opened his mouth wide. This is currently known as the fastest flying broom, which is said to be faster than the Firebolt 15 model. Grandpa only has you as a grandson. Since you have a talent for Quidditch, how can Grandpa be stingy? Alton said happily. But, it's expensive, isn't it? Maureen remembered the price of the Wind Eagle, which was 1,000 galleons. This price made many people stay away. Alton waved his hand generously. Money can be earned back. It will get moldy if it is thrown in Gringotts anyway. It is better to spend it to have fun. No matter what, our family is not poor. Maureen hugged his grandfather excitedly, then picked up the flying broom and admired it carefully. It was indeed the most perfect flying broom so far, with a perfect streamlined body, bright red all over, and the tail was like a ball of leaping flames. There was no flaw. Maureen couldn't wait to ride the Swiftwalk, but the house was not big and could not meet the space for the Swiftwalk to perform. This is a Muggle community. It's not easy to find a place to try the flying broom, but I have a way. Let's go to the attic. Alton waved to Maureen, and Maureen quickly picked up the broom and followed his grandfather to the attic. There were a lot of miscellaneous items piled up in the attic, all of which were Maureen's toys when he was a child, but Alton temporarily shrunk them all and moved them out of the room, then took out a magic wand and turned all 6 walls into smooth mirrors, including the ceiling and floor. Maureen and Alton stood in the middle of the house. It seemed as if a dazzling maze had formed in all directions. Each mirror reflected each other, and many Maureen and Alton could be seen in the mirror. This is mirror magic, a very interesting magic. It can expand the space infinitely. Of course, it is a fake space, but it is also very powerful. You can understand it as an enlarged version of the infinite space extension spell. Alton tapped the mirror on the wall with his wand. A ripple appeared where the mirror was tapped by the wand, and then the countless Maureen and Alton reflected in the mirror disappeared. Instead, all directions turned into a snow-capped hillside. Alton waved the ceiling mirror at the ceiling again, and the ceiling mirror turned into a clear sky, and the ground turned into a clean lake. Okay, you can try to ride the flying broom and hit the wall, Alton said. Maureen rode on the flying broom and rushed to the wall on the left. He was not hindered by anything. Instead, it was like rushing into the water waves. When he came out, he was already at the wall on the right. Wow, awesome! Maureen exclaimed. This mirror magic was really amazing. Alton smiled and said, this magic actually connects the left wall with the right wall. You won't hit the wall no matter how you fly. Although you are in this attic, a little illusion can make you feel like you are flying on a wide plane. Oh, yes, I will also bring the reindeer sleigh over, so that it will be fun. Reindeer sleigh is flying. Alton shook his wand lightly, and the reindeer sleigh banged the door open and automatically stopped beside Alton. Okay, let's get started. Alton sat in the reindeer sleigh, and the sleigh ran in the mirror magic. Maureen also rode his swift eagle and began to fly around the entire attic, rushing from one side to the other. He didn't feel the narrowness of the space at all. The swift eagle turned him into a fiery red phantom, and he could turn to any place with just a thought. Wow! Maureen rushed to the ceiling. When he came out, he rushed out of the lake on the ground, and he also brought a splash of water in a realistic way. It looked like it was real, and it felt great. Maureen and Alton, the grandson, were flying and running in all directions in a small attic. Laughter and joy spread out from the attic and filled the Muggle community. Those Muggles would never know what happened in the attic. Maureen had a fulfilling Christmas holiday. He almost forgot that he was attacked on the train. Because his family did not subscribe to the Daily Prophet, Maureen did not know how the outside world spread the news. Alton intended to make Maureen forget these unpleasant things and make Christmas more joyful. If there was anything that made Maureen dissatisfied, it was probably that Maureen could not perform magic at home. He could not learn many magics. At the end of the holiday, Maureen should go back to school. The train of Hogwarts had been repaired. During this holiday, the wizarding world was in an uproar about the destruction of the Hogwarts train, but the murderer was still not caught. Many parents were dissatisfied with the Ministry of Magic. In order to consider the return of Muggle-born students, the Hogwarts train was reopened. The Ministry of Magic stated that this time, each carriage of the Hogwarts train would be equipped with an aura to strengthen the security and never let the same thing happen again. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. But this time, Alton did not let Maureen take the train back. He personally took Maureen to Hogsmeade Village and sent Maureen to the school gate. Grandpa, there is really no need to do this. Muggle-born students all come back by train. Maureen climbed onto the carriage pulled by the Thestrals with his light luggage. It must be done this way to prevent it from happening. You see, it's not just us who do this, many families do this. Alton said, pointing to the carriage in front. Many wizard families do not believe in the Hogwarts train and refuse to let their children take the Hogwarts train back to school until the Dark Wizard is caught. Most wizard parents choose to send their children back to school in person. There are even fewer students taking the Hogwarts train, and they are basically Muggle-born children. The school also specifically allows parents to send their children to the school gate. Then goodbye, Maureen, see you in the summer vacation. I will see if I want to pick you up in person during the summer vacation. If the suspect to attack the train is not caught, I will come. Alton waved to Maureen, and then took the carriage back to Hogsmeade Village. They were not allowed to operate near here. Professor Flitwick personally greeted all the students returning to school at the school gate. Maureen signed Professor Flitwick's list before walking into the campus. Chapter 114 Missing. You said that the snow monster was looking for you? But it's not written in the Daily Prophet. The first thing Hugo did when he returned to school was to find Maureen to ask about this, because last time he went to Hogsmeade to find his father, he didn't take the train home with Maureen. Maureen sat on the bed, eating a piece of cake, and said, Honestly, Hugo, do you believe what the Daily Prophet said? The Daily Prophet also said that Carlo used the smoke spell to confuse people. I just find it strange. That guy used the smoke spell worse than me in the last defense against the dark arts class. It's strange that he can cast a smoke spell. Hugo said disdainfully. Hugo's smoke spell is indeed better than Carlo's. After all, Hugo's wand often goes off, and he is very proficient in this kind of spell. I made that smoke spell. He was scared and fell into the toilet. Maybe he fell into the toilet. I'm not sure. Maureen left. Although the situation was very urgent at the time, Maureen thought it was still very interesting when he thought about it now. Hugo also laughed, and then Maureen showed Hugo the flying broom, the swift eagle. Hugo's eyes widened, and he stroked the broom in amazement, and couldn't help saying, "Your grandfather is so nice. My dad would definitely not be willing to buy me such an expensive flying broom." But then again, why did that wizard want to catch you? What did you do? Hugo asked, puzzled. I also want to know what I did. Why did I become the target of that guy for no reason? Is it just because I sneak out of school sometimes? Maureen thought about all the possibilities at home. He didn't do anything at all. The only unusual thing was that he was investigating the missing and amnesiac students. Maybe it was Professor Charles. As a teacher, he knew that you would take the Hogwarts train home, and then sent his accomplice to kidnap you. You must have accidentally got hold of something on him. Hugo said very confidently. Maybe it was him, but I don't know what I got hold of on him. At most, it was Circa Duggan, the nonsense man in the painting, but many people don't believe what he said. Maureen said. Hey, I'm here. I'm not deaf. Circa Duggan waved his sword on the bedside table and said dissatisfiedly, but Maureen and Hugo ignored him. What should we do? Professor Charles may keep watching you and wait for an opportunity to attack you. Hugo said worriedly. I'm not too worried. Anyway, it's just our guess now. By the way, did you have any fun during the holidays? I played reindeer sleigh at home, which was great. Maureen and Hugo each discussed what they encountered during the holidays. Later, Toby came back by train and joined their discussion. Toby envied the way wizards celebrate Christmas, because the Muggle Christmas was far less interesting than the wizards'. It was already late at night. When they were about to go to bed, Sweet came back from outside with a school bag on his back. Sweet, how was your vacation? You didn't go home, right? Christmas at school must be good too. Maureen asked casually after spreading the sheets. Sweet put his bag on the bed, and then said dully, during Christmas, a student disappeared. He stayed in school for Christmas. Maureen and Hugo both put down what they were holding and looked at Sweet in surprise. Who is it? Maureen asked quickly. Sweet was silent for a moment, and said, we all know that person. He is the captain of our team, Poke. What? Maureen and Hugo both exclaimed. Poke is missing? But, how could it be him? Isn't he a 6th grade student? I thought the missing person should be our 1st grade student, right? Maureen and Hugo looked at each other and were shocked, because since Maureen noticed these things, the missing people were all 1st grade students. I don't know about that. I don't know the exact time of his disappearance. No one cared because it was a holiday. His roommate said that Poker's bed was piled with Christmas gifts, but they were not opened and he was missing. Then we found out that Poker was staying at school, but we haven't seen him since the holiday. Sweet said in a deep voice, and I have asked around, he hasn't shown up yet. Professor Flitwick found out that he was missing when he called the roll today. On the first day back to school, all students need to be called to ensure that the students who left school to go home for Christmas are back, but what Professor Flitwick didn't expect was that the students who left school all came back, but one of the students who stayed at school was missing. How could this happen? Maureen was getting more and more confused. Hugo remembered something, patted Maureen, and asked, did that happen to you again on the day he disappeared? Maureen knew what Hugo was going to ask, about him going back to the past every time someone disappeared, but he was 100% sure that he didn't go back to the past. No, I haven't had that happen to me since Lily's incident. Maureen shook his head. Maybe it was just when you were sleeping that you didn't know about it. Think about it. Hugo said. No, that feeling would be felt even when sleeping. This is not the point. The important thing is that Poker has been missing for so many days. Isn't that different from usual? Why is that? Maureen asked in confusion. Usually, people who disappear for a few hours or a day and a night will come back and will not attract everyone's attention, but this time is obviously different. He disappeared for a whole holiday. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. The most important thing is, why is it Poker who disappeared this time, and not other first-year students? What are you talking about? Why don't I know anything about it? Toby asked curiously on the side. Nothing. Every time someone disappears, Maureen subdues in horror. We are joking, Toby. Hugo realized that it was not a good idea to discuss this issue, so he made a face and changed the subject. The next day at breakfast, Principal McGonagall specially held a school meeting to inquire about the disappearance of Poker, a 6th-year student from Gryffindor, and asked all the students if anyone had seen Poker. It was obvious that Poker had been missing for too long this time, and had attracted the attention of the teachers. Everyone was talking and whispering, but no one raised their hands. Some accidents happened on the Hogwarts train during Christmas this time. This is very serious. There are illegal wizards outside who dare to attack the train. Here I hope that all teachers and students in the school are not allowed to leave the school, and the permission to go to Hogsmeade Village on weekends is also suspended. I don't want to see any students missing. All prefects should do a good job of roll call at 11 o'clock every night, and report any missing people in time. Principal McGonagall issued a very serious notice. Many senior students are protesting that they cannot visit Hogsmeade Village on weekends, but too many things have happened recently, and Principal McGonagall is a strict person and will not pay attention to the students' protests. If I can't go to Hogsmeade, does that mean I can't sneak out to look for Arnold? Maureen thought, stroking his chin. He usually went to Hogsmeade with a disguise hat. The premise of going there was that there were other students. The wizards in Hogsmeade would not care about him. But if all students were forbidden to go there, and he was the only student who appeared in Hogsmeade, it would be too conspicuous. After the holiday, everyone was still in a state of mind. Most people were discussing the attack on the Hogwarts train and the disappearance of Pork. These two events had a very serious impact. The attack on the Hogwarts train had already made people panic, and now a student disappeared in the school, which made many people feel deeply uneasy. Compared with these things, Maureen was more concerned about Professor Charles. He felt more and more that there was something wrong with Professor Charles. Every time he saw his gentle smile, Maureen felt very unnatural. But there was one person in the school who became a celebrity. He was Carlo Lestrange, a brave young man who used smoke spells to protect himself. His heroic deeds of fighting off the snow monster on the Hogwarts train had spread throughout the campus. Chapter 115 Smokers. Yes, that's right. The snow monster pounced on me fiercely. Its body was covered with snowflakes. Its claws were like the claws of a werewolf. 2 fangs were exposed at the corners of its mouth, and they even grew to its jaw. It moved very quickly. It was like crazy when it saw me and wanted to kill me. The scene was terrible. But I dodged to the side, stepped on the door handle, raised my wand high, and quickly fired a smoke spell. The billowing smoke distracted its attention. I took the opportunity to use a crushing spell to blow it into pieces. Before the defense against the dark arts class, Carlo was proudly bragging to other students about his experience on the Hogwarts train. He even made up all the details and the tumbling and dodging movements, making people feel like they were there. Many students were fooled by Carlo's words. Most of the students only knew a little about the burning of the Hogwarts train. They were just frozen twice, so the content of the Daily Prophet was still very convincing. With the Daily Prophet reporting it personally and Carlo showing off how he dealt with the snow monsters ingeniously, many people basically believed Carlo's words and thought he was indeed a genius who could repel snow monsters. How dare he be so shameless? When Hugo and Maureen walked into the classroom, they just happened to hear Carlo taking out his wand to dodge. Hugo glanced at Maureen indignantly. He took your credit for himself and spread it everywhere. Can you tolerate it? Maureen shrugged indifferently. Let him say what he wants. There is nothing to argue about such things. Maureen didn't care about these things. He was more concerned about how to find the missing Poker these 2 days. Carlo, you are amazing. If I met a snow monster, I would definitely faint from fear. You are so brave to fight it. Slytherin's Tabitha looked at Carlo with admiration. There's nothing to be afraid of. Carlo said complacently, I'm not bragging. If I didn't react quickly like the others, maybe you wouldn't see me. This is the unique gene of our Lestrange family. Our entire family is very good at dealing with these dark magics. Hugo couldn't help but hear Carlo say that the Lestrange family was very good at dealing with dark magics. You know, in the past, the Lestrange family had a #1 Death Eater, Bellatrix, And many students, elders and relatives died at the hands of this vicious woman. If we have to talk about dark magic, their Lestrange family is not good at dealing with dark magic, but good at using dark magic. Carlo, you really dare to confuse right and wrong. How come I heard that the smoke spell was used by Maureen? Are you the one who fell into the toilet because of fear? Did you blow up the snow monster, or were you scared by the snow monster and peed your pants? Hugo said sarcastically. Carlo's face darkened after hearing what Hugo said, and he said disdainfully, "What does it have to do with you? Did you see the snow monster at the scene? When I was fighting the snow monster, you might have huddled under the chair and trembled." Carlo glanced at Maureen again. The reason why he just said that was because there were only Maureen and him at the time, and no one else was present. In addition, the Daily Prophet reported his words. Even if Maureen wanted to tell others that the smoke spell was cast by Maureen, others would not believe it, so he was fearless. Coincidentally, I was not on the train, but I think it is better for some people not to brag shamelessly. Let me tell you. The snow monster was heading towards Maureen at the time, and Maureen fired the smoke spell. Carlo was just scared to death. Hugo said loudly. Hugo, don't talk nonsense, can the Daily Prophet be wrong? Tabitha said beside him. You believe what Judy Skeeter reported in the Daily Prophet? That's really interesting. If you believe Carlo, why don't you let Carlo cast a smoke spell? Let's all see what kind of smoke spell he uses to deal with the snow monster, and let's open our eyes. Hugo looked at Carlo with a smile. Carlo, show him, so he won't gossip. Tabitha said. Carlo's eyes were erratic, and he obviously didn't dare to show his frowning smoke spell, but he naturally had his own excuse. Who doesn't know a simple spell like the smoke spell? I just don't want to make the classroom full of smoke, and I have to go to class later. Weasley, do you think everyone is like you, whose one can only spit fire everywhere? When Hugo was about to continue to make sarcastic remarks, Professor Francis walked in from outside, and everyone immediately quieted down. Professor Francis has a strong aura of death. Taking his class will make people feel that life is full of crises, and no one dares to make trouble in his class. Professor Francis called the names, and then said in a very boring but refreshing tone, in this class, let's review the content before the holiday. I heard that there is a person in our class who has mastered the smoke spell very well. He even used the smoke spell to save himself on the Hogwarts train. The Daily Prophet also published it, right? Yes, Professor, it's Carlo. Tabitha couldn't wait to answer for Carlo. Carlo proudly puffed out his chest on the side, and the whole class looked at him enviously. Even Professor Francis knew about Carlo's deeds. Then Carlo, why don't you come up and cast a smoke spell and demonstrate it to everyone? Professor Francis said indifferently. Carlo's proud expression froze instantly. Professor, this is unnecessary. We are in class. What if the classroom is full of smoke? Carlo hurriedly declined. I'm confident that I can deal with the smoke you created, Carlo. You can come up and demonstrate it. Everyone should be clear that the defense against the dark arts class is not just about theory, but more about practice. Since Carlo cast a smoke spell to deal with the attack, you should also learn it. Carlo, come up and demonstrate it. Professor Francis continued. Everyone looked at Carlo with expectation, wanting to know how brave the little genius who could deal with the snow monster was to be published in the Daily Prophet. After all, the snow monster was not something that a first-year student could deal with. Carlo was already in a dilemma at this time. His face turned red. He wanted to refuse, but he couldn't find a reason. Although Professor Francis was a professor of Slytherin, he was not easy to fool, and he would not favor any student at will. He could only walk slowly to the podium, stretch out his wand, and shout, "Heavy smoke!" Swish! A barely visible light smoke floated out of Carlo's wand and soon dissipated. Everyone stared at the miserable little smoke in a daze. Could this level of smoke confuse people and repel the snow monster? Carlo, this is not the standard in the newspaper. Professor Francis said expressionlessly. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Carlo's face turned purple, and he wished he could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Hugo had already covered his mouth and laughed in gloating. Professor Francis glanced at Hugo and said, Weasley, do you want to show everyone your smoke spell? Hugo waved his hand and said, No, Professor. I heard that it was not Carlo who used the smoke spell on the train, but Maureen. You can let Maureen demonstrate it to everyone. Oh. Is that so? Carlo, I thought it was you who was mentioned in the newspaper. Professor Francis stared at Carlo. Carlo hesitated and gnashed his teeth in hatred. Then Maureen, you come and demonstrate the smoke spell, Professor Francis said. Maureen stood up indifferently, took out his wand, and shook it lightly. Heavy smoke. Whoosh! The billowing smoke instantly engulfed the entire classroom. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116 Professor Francis' Advice. Maureen's smoke spell overwhelmed everyone. Many students were shocked by the powerful smoke spell, because the last time Professor Francis asked everyone to practice the smoke spell, Maureen had not cast such a powerful smoke spell. Just as each student was about to pick up his own book to disperse the smoke, all the smoke gathered towards the podium and entered Professor Francis' wand. Very good. Professor Francis took out a bottle with some smoke sealed in it expressionlessly. He put the collected smoke into the smoke in the bottle and stirred it. He nodded and said, "This way, there is one less suspect in the hog train." "Professor, what does this mean?" Maureen asked. Professor Francis resealed the bottle filled with smoke and said, "It's very simple. I participated in the investigation of the dark magic on the Hogwarts train. I collected traces of the smoke spell on the train and used a special method to collect the remaining traces of the smoke spell. The traces of your smoke spell are in this bottle. In this way, I preliminarily determined that the smoke spell was not cast by the dark wizard who attacked the train." Everyone suddenly realized and was relieved. As a teacher of the Defense Against the Dark Arts class, Professor Francis would be unreasonable if he did not investigate such a big thing on the Hogwarts train. Is Maureen the only one in the class who met the Dark Wizard face to face? Who else came into contact with the Dark Wizard? Professor Francis asked. This is very important. I need to collect as much evidence as possible. Everyone looked at each other, looked at Maureen, and then looked at Carlo, with a strange look in their eyes. Carlo sat in his seat, his face was already red, he gritted his teeth, and glared back at anyone who dared to look at him. No one? Then Maureen, please stay after class. I need to ask you some questions. Oh, 10 points for Gryffindor for this smoke spell. Professor Francis treated all students equally. He would give extra points to any students who performed well, but he rarely praised anyone. To be honest, he was very old-fashioned. I had never seen him praise any student. He did not leave a good impression on people. When people saw him, they would think of things like death and black magic, which refreshed their minds. Did you see Carlo's expression? I bet he was going crazy, haha. Hugo snickered. How shameless, Carlo. A Gryffindor student muttered. The other students also understood at this time that Carlo was lying about this matter, claiming Maureen's credit as his own. This shameless behavior made many people feel very ashamed. Hugo, when was Pork born? Maureen was more concerned about Pork's affairs. I don't know. I'll go back and ask James and the others tonight. Hugo said. They had another unforgettable death threat class because of the Hogwarts train incident. This time, Professor Francis talked about the types of fire, which involved a powerful black magic that could not be destroyed by the water spell. Professor Francis also emphasized at this time, judging from the ashes collected from the carriage at the scene, this was a new type of black magic. No one knew what this flame was, and the intensity of the flame was stronger than the fiend fire. Oh my god. Can that black wizard use such a powerful black magic? You are so lucky to escape from him. Hugo couldn't help but exclaimed. In Hugo's impression, any black magic would be absolutely extraordinary as long as it came from Professor Francis' mouth. Yet, it's a bit lucky. Maureen was helpless. He hadn't told Hugo that the fire that burned the entire carriage was cast by him, so he decided not to tell him about this matter for the time being. But to be honest, this guy is really amazing, isn't he? The fire magic he cast was so powerful that even Professor Francis and the people in the Ministry of Magic couldn't identify it. Is this the black magic he studied? He is really a genius. Hugo said with certainty, and then hurriedly said, I'm not saying that he is a good person, don't get me wrong, I mean he is very smart to study black magic. I really want to know who this person is. His fire is much more powerful than mine. At most, I can only make my wand go off. Genius. Maureen held his chin with his left hand and tapped the table with his right fingertips carelessly. He didn't know if he was a genius or not. In fact, It was not his intention to make such a fire. He always thought that he just used an ordinary fire spell. If Hugo knew that the person who could cast a destructive fire was sitting next to him, then Hugo would definitely be shocked. After class, Maureen stayed alone and walked towards the podium. "Professor, is there still no news about the person who attacked the Hogwarts train?" Maureen asked. "Yes, I heard from the Aurors that the man came here specifically for you." "Why?" Professor Francis said in a very indifferent tone, neither sad nor happy. Maureen shook his head. "I have already told the Aurors what I know. I am not very clear about the details, but I remember that man cast ice and snow magic. Why didn't it leave any traces? The entire carriage was covered with snow. Wouldn't this kind of magic leave any traces?" During the holidays, Maureen was asked several times by Phil from the Auror department, but he only asked the same questions. After Maureen concealed the fact that he set the fire, there was nothing much to say. After all, he didn't know what the man looked like. This is the key point. How did he manage not to leave any trace of his magic at the scene? Professor Francis waved his wand, put away the things on the podium, and then said, "You are the only witness who has seen the Dark Wizard. None of us has seen him and we can't restore the situation at that time. If we want to find out what happened at that time, we can only start with you. Maybe you have heard of a magic, a very effective magic, which can allow me to see the scene at that time." Intuitively, Maureen already understood what Professor Francis wanted to do. He frowned and said, "Professor, legilimency is only allowed to be used on suspects, isn't it? The latest novel is first published on 6-9 Books Bar." During the holidays, Phil also made this suggestion to Alton, but Alton directly refused because Alton believed that it was a means of interrogating prisoners and his grandson was not a prisoner. "You are right. I have also heard from Phil that your grandfather does not allow anyone to use legilimency on you. Therefore, I will not force you to use this magic. I am just giving you a suggestion. After all, you are a child who has not experienced much of the world. You cannot recognize the situation at that time very well and panic. However, if I can peek into your memory, I can see what you have overlooked, and maybe I can catch the Dark Wizard and find out what he wants to do to you." Professor Francis' expression did not fluctuate at all. He was just stating a fact. If he experienced the situation at that time from Maureen's memory, with his experience in dealing with dark magic, he would naturally find more doubts than Maureen. But Maureen still refused. "Professor, I don't agree to do this because this is my privacy and I am not a criminal. I hope you can understand. Maureen has many secrets that he does not want others to know. Compared with those things that violate school rules such as sneaking out of school, what Maureen does not want others to know the most is his out-of-control fire magic." Professor Francis nodded slightly. "I understand that privacy is important to everyone, but I still hope that you can go back and think about it. After all, it is a serious matter. It is unreasonable to be able to attack a train protected by countless magic and apparate onto the train." "Professor, you said that the Hogwarts train can't apparate," Maureen said in surprise. He remembered that the man in ice disguise and the Auror both apparate into the train. "Yes, in order to prevent anyone who is not a student from sneaking in, the protective magic cast on the Hogwarts train is very complete, second only to the school's castle magic. It is precisely because of this that this matter is taken seriously by everyone. No one can apparate into the Hogwarts train, just like no one can apparate into the school, but someone has destroyed this defensive magic," Professor Francis emphasized. Chapter 117 The Suspect. "If we want to destroy this magic, how can we do it? Must we be on the Hogwarts train?" Maureen asked. "A means of transportation like a train that escorts students cannot be broken from the outside by ordinary dark wizards. This is the key point." Professor Francis looked at Maureen meaningfully and nodded slightly. "That means that the person had sneaked onto the train before the Hogwarts train started." Maureen continued to ask, "Then how to destroy the protective magic of the train?" "I can't tell you that. Can students do it?" "Generally speaking, it's impossible. So it must be an adult wizard, right?" At that time, the train attendants on the train were attacked and unconscious. "Professor, why didn't you use legilimency on them?" "Maybe someone was pretending," Maureen said. "When the attack happened, no adult wizard came out to stop it because all the train attendants and the Aurors on routine duty were knocked unconscious, but the possibility that these adult wizards were the person's accomplices cannot be ruled out. They are all suspects. According to the procedures, everyone has been checked by the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic. Everyone is innocent. You don't have to worry about this. We have made sure of it." Professor Francis looked at Maureen with a sharp gaze. I checked it myself. Believe me, I am very confident about this. Maureen was not scared by Professor Francis's gaze. He continued, if the conductor and the aurors on duty on the train are innocent, then the most likely person is that person who mixed in with the students and got on the train at the train station in Hogsmeade Village. Maybe he used an invisibility cloak or something. But I don't understand why he had to create a blizzard with great fanfare. Would that make a bigger noise? If he had an invisibility cloak, he could just look for people in each carriage first and then launch an attack. There is no need to launch an attack first and then look for people. This is very unwise. So he didn't come from Hogsmeade, right, Professor? Professor Francis' face twitched slightly, and he looked at Maureen in surprise. You have sharp observation skills. You really can't enter the Hogwarts train by relying on the invisibility cloak. Any way you can think of to sneak in, the Hogwarts train has corresponding magic to deal with it. It is a train that transports students, and the protective magic is beyond your imagination. Adult wizards who want to enter the train will be automatically registered by magic. Maureen nodded thoughtfully, his eyes flashing with a hint of strangeness. So all possibilities are ruled out at present. The only possibility is that when the Hogwarts train was halfway there was an insider on the train who destroyed the protective magic. The man paraded directly onto the train and cast a blizzard to attack the train. If this insider was not the conductor or the auror on duty, then it was. That's right, student. Professor Francis responded indifferently. You doubt me? Maureen found it funny. I'm a first-year student. Are you sure, Professor? Not just you, but all the students on the train. Adult students in the 7th grade have undergone legitimacy examinations as required, but the wizarding world has relevant laws and regulations to protect underage wizards. If we want to use legitimacy on you, we must get your consent. Professor Francis did not hide anything, and his eyes showed the same strange light when he talked about death in class. It was you who told the auror that the wizard was looking for you, so I must know why he was looking for you? Maureen, do you have any secrets that you can't tell? I have a lot of secrets that I can't tell, Professor. Maureen looked very calm. He knew that the more he denied some things, the more suspicious he would be. So he just went along with it and said, but this is my secret. Since the wizarding world has laws and regulations to protect minors, I would rather keep my own secrets. But I can assure you that even I don't know what happened. I don't know what that person looked like at the time. He was covered with wind and snow, and the magic he cast was mainly black ice. Black ice? Professor Francis frowned. But I didn't detect any black ice magic on the train. There were only some tricks played by students on each other and traces of smoke spells everywhere. Maureen, tell me first, how many spells did you cast? Smoke spell, crushing spell, petrification spell, and maybe a bonding spell on a door. Then what about the fire spell? Professor, do you really think I cast the fire spell? Maureen mustered up the courage to look at Professor Francis. I cast a fire that even 7 or 8 aurors couldn't put out. He did, but he couldn't say it. Professor Francis' eyes were cold, like a sharp knife piercing into Maureen's eyes. Maureen looked at him fearlessly. I'm not satisfied with your answer, Maureen. Professor Francis retracted his aggressive gaze. That's a pity, Professor. I have to go to the next class, otherwise I will be late. I will consider your suggestion. Maureen turned and left the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. Professor Francis did not stop him, but looked at Maureen's back meaningfully. Is Professor Francis crazy too? He actually suspects you. Hugo exclaimed during lunch. He not only suspects me, he suspects anyone who took the train that day. Maureen picked up a baked potato with a knife and fork and took a bite. But the point is that he kept you here. Just because you cast an extraordinary smoke spell, he also thinks that the fire that the auror couldn't put out was cast by you. Hugo stood up from Maureen. How could a first-year student cast such a terrible black magic? The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Maureen ate his food silently. He felt uncomfortable when he heard the word black magic. He didn't know why he could cast that kind of fire. When he lost control for the first time, he always thought it was just a coincidence. Arnold didn't make a fuss. After dinner, Maureen made an excuse to go to the library and didn't go back to the lounge with Hugo. He found a deserted place, took out the parchment, and wrote, Mr. Arnold, why can't even the aurors put out my fire? Is it my problem or your dragon flame anti-cold potion? Because the 2 times of casting out of control of the fire were achieved with the help of the Dragon Flame Anti-Cold Potion, Maureen had to suspect that the Dragon Flame Anti-Cold Potion was not an ordinary potion. But this time, after waiting for a long time, Arnold didn't reply to him. Maureen looked at the bottle of Dragon Flame Anti-Cold Potion for a long time. The potion in the bottle was a pleasant golden yellow. He swallowed a lot last time, and now there is less than half left. When Arnold gave it to him, he didn't doubt it at all, but now he has great doubts about this bottle of potion. He felt that he needed to personally identify what kind of potion this was, whether it was really Dragon's Flame Anti-Frigidity Potion, or something else strange. He ran to the library and asked Madame Pants which book he should look for regarding Dragon's Flame Anti-Frigidity Potion. Dragon's Flame Anti-Frigidity Potion? Can anyone make an anti-frigidity potion with Dragon's Flame? I've only heard of Winter Tongue Anti-Frigidity Potion, a special brand of anti-frigidity potion sold at Sissik's Potion Shop in Hogsmeade Village. For this potion, I suggest you look for it in the Potion Social Science bookshelf. There's a book called Guide to Essential Home Potions that might have some information about it. Madame Pants put the books together and said without looking up. Chapter 118 Dragon Flame Cold Repellent. Maureen found the book and turned to the introduction of the anti-cold potion. It recorded the simple ingredients and the method of brewing. The steps were a bit complicated because this anti-cold potion needed to adjust the flame temperature at different times. Many people couldn't make it because they couldn't control the temperature of the flame. Maureen skipped a series of operation steps and looked directly at the final successful result. Then use a high fire of more than 500 degrees to boil for half an hour, stir clockwise twice, and it is basically successful when the color reaches bright red. Bright red? Maureen looked at the bottle in his hand. The potion in the bottle was golden yellow, not bright red. The color illustrations in the book also showed that it was bright red. He turned to the next page and found a series of notes on it. The color and effect of the potion brewed with different flames are different. Generally, wizards use the flames made by their own wands, but the effect of this anti-cold potion does not last long. About 1 drop can only drive away the cold for about half an hour. Someone once used a properly trained fire-tail cat to brew it. The fire-tail cat is more humane, and its flame temperature can be adjusted at will according to the wizard's instructions, and 1 drop can drive away the cold for an hour. 1 drop of ordinary anti-cold potion can only drive away the cold for an hour at most. Maureen remembered that Arnold said that a drop of Dragon Flame Anti-Cold Potion can drive away the cold for a whole day. He turned to the page on how to identify potions. The identification of anti-cold potion said that if the red spots of the fire-breathing orchid change color, it is an anti-cold potion. The darker the color becomes, the better the anti-cold potion is. The anti-cold potion can also make the fire-breathing orchid grow more vigorously, and it is a growth accelerator. It happened that they were taking care of the fire-breathing orchid for a period of time before the holiday. Maureen planned to verify in the herbal medicine class whether the one Arnold gave him was the Dragon Flame Anti-Cold Potion. He knew that some potions could make people's magic out of control. He had to figure out whether the so-called black magic flame came from himself or from this bottle of potion. Or was the potion Arnold gave him to stimulate some black magic hidden in his body? For example, the Sorting Hat told him at the beginning of the school year that heterochromatic eyes hide a special magic. Could it be that his heterochromatic eyes hide the eternal flame that everyone calls black magic? Although Maureen was reluctant to admit it, he thought it was best to get things clear. Originally, they were supposed to have herbology class first and potions class later in the afternoon, but everyone received a notice that herbology class and potions class were temporarily swapped, so they had to rush to potions class first. Professor Longbottom said that Fire Orchid had a little accident during the Christmas holidays and urgently needs the magic grass rooting potion to treat it, so our classes are swapped first. Your task in this class is to brew the magic grass rooting potion. Professor Theodore wrote all the steps for brewing the potion on the blackboard and said, after it is brewed successfully, it will be just in time for use in the next herbology class. Today's class grade for potions class will be counted together with the herbology class, depending on how well you save the fire orchid that you are responsible for taking care of. All of them will be graded by Professor Longbottom, so if you don't brew the potion successfully in this class, you will not get a class grade in the next herbology class. Good luck everyone. When everyone heard that the grades of the potions class and the herbology class were actually linked together, no one dared to be careless. Once the potion in this class failed to be brewed, it meant that the grades of 2 different classes would be affected, so everyone began to brew the magic grass rooting potion seriously according to the steps. Maureen looked at Professor Theodore, who was walking around in the classroom to instruct everyone. He wanted to give the Dragon Flame anti-cold potion to Professor Theodore for identification. Maybe the professor would know what kind of potion it was. But he didn't dare to do it in the end. If Professor Theodore found out that it was a dangerous banned potion, he would not be able to explain it clearly. Maureen's potion class was also very good. He followed the steps step by step. Soon the red potion in the crucible turned into clear water. He also took the time to help Hugo correct the steps and saved Hugo's potion in time. Great, thanks to you. Did you see Carlo? He's still staring at us. Haha, it's a pity that we have lost face today and can't do anything to us. Hugo laughed. There's no need to bother with him. Maureen didn't care about what happened in the defense against the dark arts class in the morning. It was none of his business how Carlo humiliated himself. He just wanted to finish the potion class quickly and go to the herb class to get the fire-breathing orchid to identify whether the potion Arnold gave him was an anti-cold potion. But just as he was about to put the brewed potion into the glass bottle, 2 black stones suddenly fell into the crucibles of Maureen and Hugo respectively with a snap. The clear water-like potions in their 2 crucibles immediately turned into an ugly black color. Maureen looked up and saw Carlo looking at him provocatively in front of him. He threw the stone in his hand and put it away. Carlo, do you still have any shame? Hugo shouted angrily. Oh, who saw that I did this? Carlo waved his potion with a smug look on his face. Hugo wanted to go to Professor Theodore to seek justice, but Professor Theodore was not there. Because he did not need to grade the potions brewed in this class, he left early. At the same time, the bell rang for the end of get out of class. It seems that some people's grades in potions and herbalism will be cancelled. Carlo laughed and left the classroom with his companions. Maureen also looked at Carlo's back coldly and pulled Hugo, who was about to rush up and fight with Carlo. Why don't you let me teach this shameless villain who is thick-skinned and uses despicable tricks a lesson? He caused us to lose grades in both potions and herbology. Hugo said angrily. Not necessarily. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Maureen put the waste potion in the crucible into the bottle, then cleaned up the remaining things and packed his things. He touched the Dragon Flame Cold Repellent in his pocket. The book said that Dragon Flame Cold Repellent can make the fire-breathing orchid grow better. If what Arnold gave him was really Dragon Flame Cold Repellent, then this can be used to replace the magic grass rooting agent. What do you mean not necessarily? What should we do now? Maybe we can go to Lily to get some, but everyone doesn't make much, so she may not have enough. Hugo said with gritted teeth. Anyway, go to the herbology class first. Maureen urged. When they arrived at the greenhouse of the herbology class, Carlo was looking at them triumphantly. Hugo was very annoyed, but Maureen didn't even look at Carlo, who was playing tricks. Neville asked everyone to take off their coats. It was not cold in the greenhouse, and then he said, a unicorn poked a hole in the greenhouse this morning, causing the temperature to drop sharply. The fire-breathing orchids are afraid of the cold. Although I found it in time at noon, they are still about to wither. I originally wanted to buy anti-cold potion to save them, but then I thought about it and decided to let Professor Theodore teach you how to make magic grass rooting potion. Ordinary anti-cold potions can't compare to magic grass rooting potion. Professor Theodore should have told you about the situation, right? Yes, Professor Longbottom. Carlo couldn't wait to take out his potion. Every one of us prepared it. Professor Theodore said that the grades of potions and herbology classes are counted together. If someone's potion doesn't work, does it mean there is no score? After that, he looked at Hugo and Maureen provocatively. Chapter 119 Dragon Flame Cold Repellent. Yes, I have determined that the fire orchid is starting to wither. I hope your potion is effective. I will assess the score based on the recovery of each group's fire orchid. This is also an opportunity for you to observe how to save the withered fire orchid. Okay, go find the fire orchid you are responsible for, and then start using your potion to revive the fire orchid. Neville said. Before the holiday, the fire orchid had grown fiery red leaves all over its body, as if it was about to burn, but now every fire orchid in the greenhouse has turned yellow, and the leaves are about to wither. Hugo and Maureen found the fire orchid they were responsible for taking care of. The leaves of the fire orchid drooped weakly, and the branches drooped, feeling like they were about to break, half dead. What should we do now? The fire-breathing orchid can't even spit fire now. It's frozen like this. Hugo glanced at the students in other groups. Everyone's fire-breathing orchid weighed 8 pounds, but at least they all had magic grass-rooting agent in their hands. The steps to brew magic grass-rooting agent were not complicated, and basically everyone successfully brewed it. Maureen and Hugo only had the bottle of black magic grass-rooting agent that looked like ink. Their potion was maliciously destroyed by Carlo. Alice, some people are really pitiful. They can't even brew magic grass-rooting agent. It's really interesting. Carlo said in a sarcastic tone not far from them, deliberately letting Maureen and Hugo hear his voice. Hugo clenched his fists. Carlo also took advantage of Neville's approach and said loudly, "Professor, do we pour the magic grass-rooting agent directly on the roots of the fire-breathing orchid?" "Yes." Neville nodded. Carlo shook the magic grass-rooting agent in his bottle. The potion in his bottle was not as clear and transparent as Maureen's, but had a hint of turbidity, but it was much better than others. "Professor, then help me see how my magic grass-rooting agent works." Carlo deliberately glanced at Hugo and Maureen, then pulled out the cork and poured the magic grass-rooting agent on the roots of the fire-breathing orchid in front of Neville. The bent branches of the fire-breathing orchid in front of him began to straighten slowly, and the yellow leaves gradually began to reveal a trace of red stripes. A fire-breathing orchid has about 20 leaves. 2 leaves of Cardo's plant have even turned completely red and started to emit sparks. These 2 leaves have recovered to the same state as before they were frostbitten. Not bad. Carlo's magic grass-rooting agent can already show initial effects. Neville nodded slightly and recorded the score in his notebook. Judging from Neville's handwriting, it seems that the score is not low. "Thank you, Professor Longbottom." Carlo glanced at Hugo and Maureen with a smug look. Hugo turned his head and said angrily, "It's so annoying. If Carlo accidentally got cursed at night and was admitted to the school hospital, you'd better not be surprised. Such a cunning villain should stay in the hospital for a few weeks." Maureen held a black and useless magic grass-rooting agent in his hand and said to Hugo, "Go to the cabinet and find me a pair of dragon leather gloves. I forgot to bring my gloves." "It doesn't matter if I forget to bring them. Anyway, this half-dead fire-breathing orchid will not spit fire to attack us again," Hugo said angrily. "Oh, go quickly. I'll take a look at this magic grass-rooting agent first to see if I can do some remedial measures. Maybe it will work," Maureen urged. "Okay then." Hugo had no choice. He turned his head and glared at Carlo fiercely, then walked towards the cabinet in the greenhouse. Maureen quietly took out the Dragon Flame anti-cold potion, uncorked the bottle, and tapped it with his magic wand. A drop of golden Dragon Flame anti-cold potion floated in the air. He carefully controlled the drop of potion and let it drip on the red spot of the fire-breathing orchid. Carlo was laughing at Hugo, and everyone else's attention was focused on their own fire-breathing orchid. No one saw what Maureen was doing. "Whether this is Dragon Flame anti-cold potion or not, it's up to you," Maureen said in his heart. This was very important to him. He wanted to know whether the potion that Arnold gave him was the real Dragon Flame anti-cold potion. A drop of Dragon Flame anti-cold potion has already sunk into the red spot. Swish! All the leaves of the fire-breathing orchid suddenly began to shake, and the red spot of the half-dead fire-breathing orchid became extremely transparent, like a red-hot iron, about to drip blood. Then the leaves of the entire bent fire-breathing orchid stood up, and the originally sickly dead leaves became like flames, with sparks occasionally splashing from the tips of the leaves, and they became fiery again. Our magic grass-rooting agent was successful. When Hugo took back the dragon leather gloves, he happened to see the scene of the fire-breathing orchid reviving. He shouted in surprise, and his voice was not small. Carlo on the side was also attracted by Hugo's shouting. Not only him, but everyone heard Hugo's shouting and turned to look at Maureen's fire-breathing orchid. The fire-breathing orchid had completely revived and looked like a burning flame, vigorous and thriving, with sparks flying everywhere. "This is impossible." Carlo's proud look suddenly stagnated. Although his fire-breathing orchid had also revived a little, it was far inferior to Maureen's fire-breathing orchid. Neville also came over in surprise and nodded. It seems that the effect of the group of Maureen and Hugo is the most obvious. By the way, this is the first time I have seen the magic grass-rooting agent can play such a good effect. Generally speaking, it is not so obvious. "Impossible, your magic grass-rooting agent was obviously destroyed by me," Carlo said anxiously, but soon closed his mouth. He almost let it slip. "What happened to you? Was it destroyed by your dirty tricks?" Hugo showed a relieved smile on his face. This time it was his turn to laugh at Carlo. Carlo looked unwilling. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. However, at this moment, the fire-breathing orchid in front of Maureen suddenly caught fire with a crash. All the leaves really burned this time. The flames flickered and soon burned into a pile of ashes. This time it was Hugo's turn to stop smiling. What happened? Did you save it too much? Haha. Is this the effect of the magic grass-rooting agents you brewed? Let the fire-breathing orchid burn itself? This is really funny. Carlo laughed arrogantly again. Professor, this group destroyed the fire-breathing orchid. Should they be punished? I think they should be put in solitary confinement so that they can't concentrate on completing their class tasks, and by the way, deduct Gryffindor's points. But Neville walked quickly to Maureen, used his hand to push away the pile of ashes on the fire-breathing orchid pot, and took out a bright red fruit from it with his wand, and exclaimed, "It's amazing. Maureen, your magic grass-rooting agent is so effective that it allows the fire-breathing orchid to mature early." Neville showed everyone the bright red fruit and continued, "Students, Maureen didn't destroy the fire-breathing orchid. Remember what I told you at the beginning, when the fire-breathing orchid matures, it will burn and produce a fruit. This is its fruit." Maureen's magic grass-rooting agent allowed a fire-breathing orchid to enter the maturity period early. This is amazing. I have never heard of a magic grass-rooting agent that can do this. Carlo's mocking words that had just been brewing were choked in his throat, almost choking him. "Professor, are you sure?" Carlo asked in disbelief. "Of course I'm sure, Carlo," Neville said. "Maureen and Hugo got full marks in this class, including potions and herbal medicine, both full marks." "What?" Carlo opened his mouth wide. How could he have thought that Maureen and Hugo both got full marks? You know, his magic grass-rooting agent only restored 2 leaves, but Maureen's potion directly made the fire-breathing orchid harvest and bear fruit. The difference is more than just 1 or 2 points. The expression on Carlo's face suddenly looked uglier than if he had eaten dragon dung. I just checked and actually received a reward of 10,000 Kidian coins from a book friend learning Can't Save China. I won't say anything else. I will update 3 chapters today. I don't know if you have noticed that I actually still owe 2 chapters. Last time I said that I would add more chapters for every 500 recommendation votes. Now there are more than 2,000 recommendation votes, and I haven't fulfilled it yet. But don't worry, I remember it all. You vote, and I will add more chapters. The principle is very simple. I should be able to make up the 2 chapters I owe within a week. You can remind me in the book review area. Thanks to the book friend Panda who loves novels, who also gave a lot of rewards, as well as book friend 20170727081449390 inches, passing by the crowd of melon eaters, Z Mu Kin Zheng, Wu, Guangai as number 1 point guard, Wei Liu, book friend 160,207,225,413,223, King of Blade, Remix, Xia Shui Xiangling, Still Don't Believe in Sweet People, Timo Dong, book friend 140,704,221,450,404 and others for their rewards. In fact, this book was put on the shelves without any recommendation, and its popularity is too low, so the subscription is also terrible. But as I said before, as long as there are people willing to support me, I will continue to write. You have read this far, and at least you have paid to subscribe. I can't let everyone subscribe to a unique novel, right? Please help promote it more, and by the way, cast more recommendation votes. For every 500 recommendation votes, I will add 1 more chapter. Anyway, I have given it my all, and it doesn't matter if I add 1 more chapter. Maybe the plot can run faster. I also thank the book friends who vote for recommendations every day, such as Yao Xiaoji Online's fixed support of 9 votes per day, and the Passing by Melon Eating crowd with a fixed support of 5 votes per day, as well as those book friends who vote every day. Thank you for your support. If there are frequent updates in the future, it will be everyone's credit. Your support is really important and it is my motivation to keep writing. Right parenthesis. Chapter 120 People born in December. All the students looked at Maureen and Hugo with envy. Although their fire-breathing orchids were saved a little, their leaves were also red and yellow, not to mention that they could not make the fire-breathing orchids produce fruits directly like Maureen did. Maureen was also very surprised. After the fire-breathing orchid absorbed the potion and came back to life, he had initially determined that the potion given to him by Arnak was indeed a cold repellent potion, But he did not expect that Arnok's potion was more powerful than he imagined, and it directly made the fire-breathing orchid produce fruits. Professor, he must be cheating. His potion cannot be effective to this extent. If you don't believe me, ask him to take out the potion and take a look. You will definitely be able to tell whether his potion is effective or not. Carlo said impatiently. He remembered very clearly that he threw 2 pieces of black ox-horn broken stones into the crucible of Maureen and Hugo to destroy the magic grass rooting potion they brewed. Carlo was so confident because the black ox-horn crushed stone was also a necessary material for brewing the magic grass rooting agent. The book also specifically noted that if the black ox-horn crushed stone was taken out in time within the first 5 minutes of brewing, if it was left for a few seconds longer, the magic grass rooting agent could not be used. Especially at the last moment, Carlo took advantage of Maureen and Hugo's inattention and threw the black ox-horn crushed stone into their crucible, which was equivalent to completely destroying their potion, so he was 100% sure that Maureen was a fake. Hugo shouted angrily, Carlo, do you think everyone is as shameless as you? You use conspiracy to frame others. Why are you so sure that the magic grass rooting agent we brewed is fake? Why don't you show me some evidence? Hugo knew that Carlo didn't dare to tell the truth unless Carlo admitted that he destroyed Maureen and Hugo's potion. If Carlo dared to say so, he would be even more miserable. Carlo, you are not allowed to frame others without evidence. Neville raised his voice, then turned around and said expectantly, Maureen, I am not doubting you, but I want to know how you brew your potion. Maybe I should learn how to brew it, so that I can save these herbs, and maybe even mass-produce fire-breathing orchids. Maureen had already emptied the bottle of potion destroyed by Carlo. He raised the empty bottle with regret and said, I'm sorry, Professor Longbottom. I have used up all the magic grass rooting agent, not a drop left. To be honest, my magic grass rooting agent can play such a great effect, thanks to Carlo. Maureen glanced at Carlo carelessly. Carlo was so angry that his teeth were almost bitten off. He didn't know whether Maureen's words were true or false. If they were true, he would probably regret it. That's a pity. Maybe I can ask Professor Theodore for the correct way to prepare the magic grass rooting agent. Okay, everyone show me your fire-breathing orchids. I'm going to give each of you a grade. I don't ask you to be as good as Maureen and Hugo, but at least don't disappoint others. Neville took the notebook and started to give everyone a grade. Carlo was lucky and escaped. Hugo came over and said excitedly, I was originally planning to cast a few evil spells on him after class and let him lie in the hospital for 2 days to see if he dared to plot. But now it seems that it is no longer necessary. His current state is more refreshing than being admitted to the school hospital. By the way, how did you do it? I just added a little bit of other ingredients to try to see if it could be saved. I didn't expect it to succeed. Maureen didn't tell the truth. He still planned to keep the matter of the dragon flame cold repellent a secret. You are really a genius. Hugo patted Maureen's shoulder and said with a smile, without any doubt. When they returned to the common room at night, Hugo hurried in from outside and found Maureen who was doing homework in the corner. He said, James told me that Poker's birthday is December 8th. Maureen put down her pen and said in surprise, December 8th? So he is the 6th person. They had always thought that the 6th missing person was Sweet, but these people disappeared in the order of their birth in even months, so Poker met the criteria. Sweet also disappeared in September, and there were those strange marks on his back. Why? I wonder about this too. Our birthdays are all even months, so why Sweet mixed in? Hugo looked puzzled. The most puzzling thing is that Poker is the only one among these missing people who is not a freshman. Maureen was completely confused about this matter. He now had a lot of doubts that he had not solved. When Poker disappeared, he did not return to the past as usual, but was attacked by an unknown dark wizard. He himself had some uncontrollable and terrible fire magic. Maureen could not tell whether these things had anything to do with Professor Charles. It must be Professor Charles. Maybe when you and your grandfather went to Diagon Alley that day, he followed you and wanted to take the opportunity to attack you, but because your grandfather was there, he left. Hugo guessed. This possibility cannot be ruled out. Maureen said, I feel more and more that Professor Charles is weird. He also bought a lot of things related to painting that day, especially black dragon bile. Professor Charles seemed to want to trap someone in the painting and prevent him from running around. At that time, the cashier at Weasley's Trickster said that black dragon bile could prevent the person in the painting from leaving the frame. If someone in the painting knew Professor Charles's conspiracy, then it is very likely that Professor Charles bought black dragon bile to deal with those people in the painting who knew his secret and would run around. Unfortunately, all this is just speculation. Maureen did not find any definite evidence of Professor Charles, and Poker did not return after disappearing for a day as usual, so things became more and more confusing. In the next few days, the Gryffindor team was in a gloomy mood. This Saturday, Gryffindor played against Slytherin, but the captain of Gryffindor mysteriously disappeared, which made the Gryffindor players a little overwhelmed. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. Philia temporarily replaced the captain's position, but she found that without Poker, she didn't know how to train when she led the team. Although Poker always liked to talk about various tactics that made people sleepy, he was very good at training. His sudden disappearance at this time made the Gryffindor team seem to be missing a hand. We will definitely be beaten badly by Slytherin in Saturday's game. Owen, another chaser in their team, sighed while covering his eyes. He was hit in the eye by a bludger and his eye was swollen now. Don't be discouraged. The goalkeeper Bruno encouraged everyone. If it was usual, we would be pressed to the ground by Slytherin without Poke, but now that Maureen has the Windhawk, we can at least stand and take the beating. He might as well not say it, because everyone's face became more depressed after hearing his words. Maureen is now the only hope of their team, but Maureen himself is not in good shape. Even with the best flying broom, he did not play to his due level because his mind was in a mess and he was almost hit by the bludger several times. But their training was interrupted. Professor Kane, the head of Gryffindor, shouted at them to come down from the court. What's wrong? Professor Kane, we are thinking about how to avoid being beaten too badly by Slytherin. Are you here to give us some advice? James waved his stick in the sky. Shut up. James. Pork's parents are here, and you just happen to know Pork, so come with me. Professor Kane said. Chapter 121 Poker's Parents. All the Gryffindor players were called to the staff lounge on the first floor of the castle, where they met Poker's parents. Poker's parents were both Muggles, not wizards. If wizards were dissatisfied with something, they would just send a yelling letter to express their anger, but Poker's parents couldn't do that. They didn't even know what to say. Poker's mother sat on a chair in the corner and sobbed slightly. Next to her was a tall man in a suit, who looked out of place with the professors in wizard robes around him. Among these professors, only Professor Charles, who was proficient in Muggle studies, was talking to Poker's father. In this occasion, Professor Charles was obviously the most suitable person to communicate with Poker's parents. But when Maureen saw Professor Charles, he always thought of some messy things inexplicably. Mr. William, Poker performed very well in school. He is the captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. These are his players. Professor Charles saw Maureen and the others coming, so he introduced Maureen and the others to Mr. William. Hello, Pork often mentioned you at home. I also know some Quidditch rules. My son Pork taught me. Mr. William nodded to Maureen and others. Maureen and others also greeted Pork's parents. Pork often mentioned you to us, Mr. William. He said that you taught him a lot of military theories, and Pork also applied them to Quidditch tactics. James said, we benefited a lot. Many games depended on him. James spoke very appropriately. They all knew that Pork's father was a Muggle military commander and knew a lot of Muggle strategies. Last time, Pork used the Eastern art of war to formulate Quidditch tactics. Although everyone didn't understand the Muggle stuff, they still showed due respect to Pork's father. He is very smart. If he had not received the admission letter 6 years ago, he might have gone to a military school. Mr. William sighed. He seemed to regret letting his son go to school here. Then he asked, you really don't know where my son went? I heard that my son had one last training with you before the holiday. All the players looked at each other. They did have a training before the holiday, but that was all. After the training, everyone was busy going home. Professor Kane had asked them about these things 2 days ago. Sorry, Mr. William, we really don't know. James shook his head. Mr. William looked disappointed, and his wife sobbed again beside him. Mr. William looked at James, then at the others, and took out a few photos from his pocket, saying, I recognize you. You are the batsman James. Poker said that you and Albus performed very well. You two brothers are the best batsmen among the 4 teams. I also know you, the most promising first-year talent. Your name is Maureen, right? Poker sent me your photos 2 months ago. I know all of you. Mr. William said each of their names one by one, which surprised Maureen and others. After all, there is a big generation gap between Muggles and wizards, but Mr. William not only knows the rules of Quidditch, but also knows the Quidditch players of Gryffindor, which is really amazing. What Poker introduced to me the most is his team. It's a pity. I don't know where he is now. Mr. William stroked the photos in his hand and said. The photos in his hand were all moving and colorful. Everyone was riding a flying broom on the court, flying to the camera from time to time, full of vigor and vitality. Poker obviously sent the photos of wizards to their parents. The other professors were accompanying him. They couldn't get a word in about Pork's Muggle parents. Even Headmistress McGonagall didn't know what to say. She could only watch Mr. William browse through each photo and sigh. Mr. William's hand stopped at the photo of his son Pork. In this photo, Pork was not riding a flying broomstick, but wearing the school's wizard robes, with his arms folded across his chest, bandaged hands, holding a brown wand, and smiling at the camera. But Maureen was suddenly stunned and stared at the photo. "Sir, can you lend me this photo of Pork?" Maureen asked. Everyone turned their heads to look at Maureen in confusion, not understanding why Maureen suddenly made this request. "Oh, okay." Mr. William gave Maureen the photo of Pork in his hand. Maureen's eyes fell on the brown wand in Pork's hand. He gently tapped the photo, and Pork's hand moved away, revealing the other end of the wand. The end of the wand held by the hand was protected by a brown magic sheath. This magic sheath can prevent the disarming spell to a certain extent, and is very popular among wizards. And Maureen had seen this wand before. On the Hogwarts train, on the day he was attacked, the weirdo who was disguised with snow and wind was holding this brown wand. How could this happen? Maureen's heart was in turmoil. Although the situation on the train was very urgent, he would never mistake this brown wand. At that time, he wanted to use the disarming spell to deal with the weirdo, but failed. The wand also had the same magic sheath. So the person who attacked him on the train that day was Poker? Maureen's mind was churning, but why would Poker attack him? Poker couldn't possibly attack Maureen. Maureen was a genius of the Gryffindor team. How could Poker attack a member of his own team? Then, how to explain this brown wand? Maureen, what's wrong? Did you notice any clues? Professor Francis suddenly walked to Maureen quietly and said in his unpredictable voice. Everyone stared at Maureen. No, Professor, I didn't notice anything. I just found that Pork's hand seemed to be injured and bandaged. Maureen returned the photo to Mr. William. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. How could he say that he was attacked by this brown one that day? If he told the truth, would his parents accept it? Should Maureen tell Pork's parents in person that Pork had most likely attacked him with this wand before he disappeared? Yes, when he took this photo, he said that the potion in his cauldron splashed and dripped onto his hand, and it would take several days to recover. Mr. William took the photo and said. Maureen stepped aside silently. He recognized the brown wand that attacked him, but he kept telling himself that any wizard could have taken Pork's wand to find him, not necessarily Pork. But in his heart, he actually began to realize that after his uncontrolled fire melted the snow disguise on the wizard's body that day, the man's figure was indeed very similar to the tall and strong Pork. Mr. William stood up, with a trace of grief in his eyes. Thank you for your concern. If you have any news about my son, please let me know. Mr. William put the photo away, patted Maureen on the shoulder, and continued with a dim look, after all, he is my only son. Mr. and Mrs. William thanked everyone, and then walked towards the door accompanied by Principal McGonagall. Maureen looked at Pork's parents. They were two Muggles who came to the wizard school and looked very restrained. Their son was missing, and even the wizards couldn't find him, let alone the two Muggles who didn't understand magic. Even if they wanted to ask the school for an explanation for their son, they didn't have the ability. Maureen kept watching the parents leave the lounge, and suddenly felt very uncomfortable. Everyone has parents to worry about, so what about his parents? He had flames on his body that could get out of control at any time, was mistaken for black magic, and was attacked on a train. Yet his parents never wrote a letter to him, haven't been home for several years, not even at Christmas. Do they still remember that they have a son? Chapter 122 Professor Francis's Intuition. After sending Pork's parents away, Maureen was also in a very depressed mood. Perhaps it was because Pork had his parents to worry about, but Maureen didn't, or perhaps it was because the wizard who wanted to catch him was most likely Pork, and he couldn't accept it. In short, he remained silent. Pork actually told his father that Albus and I were the best hitters in the school. He must be flattered. James muttered in a low voice. After all, Pork scolded him the most. It's a pity that without Pork, the game on Saturday will probably be terrible. Philia sighed. Hey, Philia, don't say discouraging words. We have 3 excellent substitutes. They are not so easy to be defeated. James encouraged everyone. Slytherin only has 7 relatively strong players, but we have 9. That's because only 7 can play in the game, James. Bruno said. Have some confidence in yourself. James glared at Bruno. Let's go. Let's train for another hour and try the whirlwind double flying tactics that Poke mentioned. It's the whirlwind and the double flying. Shut up, of course I know. When everyone was about to go to the Quidditch field to train again, Professor Francis stopped Maureen. Can you stay for a while, Maureen? Professor, Maureen is the key to our training. We have lost one person and don't want to lose another one. After all, we are going to compete with the people from your college. James spoke very bluntly. Professor Francis was the dean of Slytherin. He stopped Maureen, which made James very dissatisfied, and he didn't speak so politely. I know. Professor Francis said expressionlessly, 5 minutes, it won't take too long. Okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Maureen motioned James and the others to leave first. After James and the others left, Maureen looked up and looked into Professor Francis' eyes, without avoiding anything. I think you know some truth, Maureen. Professor Francis has a keen sense of smell. Maureen said calmly, why do you think so, Professor? Intuition. That's a pity, your intuition is probably wrong. I know nothing, Professor. Maureen looked calm. He would not tell anyone what he saw about Pork's wand. There must be some hidden secrets in this matter. Maybe Pork was controlled by someone, or someone deliberately used Pork's wand to confuse right and wrong. In any case, he would find out for himself. My intuition about some things is very accurate, believe me. Professor Francis looked at Maureen coldly. I think you definitely don't want the Gryffindor team to be missing a chaser forever, so I still give the same advice as last time. You know what I want to say. I know, Professor, but my answer is still the same. I don't agree with you using legilimency on me. Maureen's tone was very firm. Poker's disappearance may have something to do with the Hogwarts train. I'm just guessing. You were the person on the train and your memory is very important to me. Professor Francis emphasized, with my experience, I can see things that you can't tell. Maureen shook his head. He glanced at Professor Charles, who was sitting on the sofa in the staff lounge watching their conversation. He felt very uncomfortable, but still said politely, I'm sorry, Professor, that's what happened that day. I can't provide you with much help. I'm going to Quidditch training. You shouldn't be so stubborn. Although you are a minor, you should also know how to help others solve the case. Professor Francis' voice sounded a little angry. Honestly, Professor. Maureen looked at Professor Francis fearlessly. You said your intuition is very accurate. Then who do you think will win the game on Saturday, Gryffindor or Slytherin? Professor Francis stared at Maureen coldly. You shouldn't be so rude, Maureen. You shouldn't always force others. Professor, I didn't do anything wrong. The person who really did something wrong is still at large. If your intuition is really accurate, you should be able to catch him easily. Maureen was also in a bad mood. Pork's parents came to Hogwarts, but he found that the person who attacked him might be Pork. This made him upset. He glanced at Professor Charles inadvertently and turned to leave the staff lounge. On Saturday morning, the Gryffindor team members were in a terrible mood. Usually they thought Pork was too long-winded, but when Pork was not there, they always felt that they were missing a backbone. After all, Pork was usually the one who commanded during the game. Maureen had no appetite during breakfast and didn't eat anything. Lily also looked a little nervous. Sweet had disappeared a long time ago and was probably waiting in the locker room. Would you like a glass of oxaloid juice? It's a special offer this morning. This juice can refresh your mind and may be good for you. Hugo never had a bad appetite. He ate happily. Now he has officially become a commentator for Quidditch matches. He always has a big meal before commentating on a match, saying that he will have the energy to comment only if he is full. Maureen shook his head. Hey, you have a chocolate frog here. This is not bad either. Hugo took out a chocolate frog from the middle of the plate in front of Maureen and handed it to Maureen. I didn't know chocolate frogs were available for breakfast. The latest novels are first published on 6ix9ine Books Bar. Maureen took the chocolate frog, and Philia came over and said, "We should go." "Oh. You have a chocolate frog. Break some off for me. Eating this before the game can give me strength. All for you." Maureen gave the chocolate frog to Philia. Philia broke another half and handed it to Diana. "You eat some too. Don't be nervous in this game. Just do your best." Diana's performance in the past few games has been very good. She will not be as nervous as the first time. Today she will also play, but she took over Poker's position, and Maureen will be the seeker. When they left the hall and rushed to the Quidditch field, they saw Carlo holding the Slytherin flag. One of the Gryffindor lions is missing. It seems that this time it will become a kitten. Haha. Carlo laughed unscrupulously. "Shut up. How dare you appear in front of us so shamelessly, Carlo?" Hugo said angrily. "I don't have time to talk to you, Weasley. I'm going to the Quidditch field to see how the big snake eats the kitten, haha." Carlo waved the Slytherin flag in his hand triumphantly. "It's a pity that your Gryffindor Poker is missing, but I think it's the same with or without him, don't you think? I hope you won't be short of people, otherwise the game will be boring." The Gryffindor players stared at Carlo angrily, but Carlo had turned around and went to the field with other Slytherin students. Hugo waved his fist at Carlo's disgusting back and said, "I changed my mind. I must find a way to get him to the hospital for 2 days. You guys have to work hard. I really hate Carlo's face and don't want to see him smug in front of me in the future. Let's go. There's no need to waste words with such a person. If he thinks that we can lose our composure by saying such words, then he is too naive." Maureen left the castle with the others. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, Adding Insult to Injury. The weather was fine and sunny this Saturday. Many students took the best seats early and talked about the game. Because everyone in the school knew that Gryffindor Captain Poker disappeared during Christmas, the situation for Gryffindor was not optimistic. Slytherin was a strong team. Even if Gryffindor had a rising star who was known as a genius, it would be useless. Everyone was still optimistic about Slytherin. In the Gryffindor common room, everyone looked unhappy. Then Maureen, "The goal of this game is very simple. You just need to catch the golden snitch as soon as possible. You must not drag it out. Without Poker, we can't fight Slytherin. We have to end the game as soon as possible," Philia said. This was the battle strategy they agreed on yesterday. Because without Poker's command, they couldn't coordinate their lineup, so they decided to adopt a defensive tactic and let Maureen act as a seeker to catch the golden snitch as soon as possible and not give Slytherin the opportunity to increase the score. "By the way, where is James? Why can't I see him?" Philia asked. As they were talking, James suddenly walked in from outside and said solemnly, "It's terrible. Pork's parents didn't leave the school. They also came to watch the game today. Professor Kane just told me to behave better. Pork's parents are here." Philia walked to the door of the locker room and looked at the stands in the distance. Sure enough, she found Mr. and Mrs. Williams sitting next to Professor Kane. Mrs. Williams' face was still very pale, and Mr. William was looking at the students who kept cheering. I don't know what he was thinking. This is very bad. If we are beaten too badly by Slytherin, I'm afraid we will let Pork down. Albus swung the bat in the air depressedly. Philia clapped her hands and asked everyone to focus their attention on her. Everyone cheer up. Although Pork's father is a Muggle, he knows a lot about Quidditch. Don't leave a bad impression on him, Philia said. Madam Hooch had already blew a short whistle outside. Maureen picked up his swift thought and cleared his mind of unpleasant thoughts. He leaped forward, and the swift thought had already carried him into a phantom, rushing into the Quidditch field. Very good. The first Quidditch match after the holiday, Gryffindor vs. Slytherin. Players from both teams are already on the field. We all know that Gryffindor's captain had some accidents, causing Gryffindor to lose a good player. This game will test the on-the-spot reaction of Gryffindor players. Everyone is looking forward to whether they can withstand the pressure in the absence of the captain, win this game, and defeat Slytherin. Before Hugo finished speaking, there was a burst of booing from the Slytherin side, and many people were still laughing loudly. The source of the booing came from Carlo's mouth, and he shouted the loudest. Hugo ignored all this. He already knew how to explain the game fairly. He continued, but Slytherin is not a weak team. Each of the players is very strong, so this game is a difficult challenge for Gryffindor. If Pork is there, the strength of both sides should be evenly matched, but without Pork, it's hard to say. We can only hope that Gryffindor's substitute player Maureen can use his new broom, the Swiftwalk, to make up for Pork's absence. Let's wait and see. Maureen deliberately slowed down his speed to keep pace with the others. They were flying to the center of the court, ready to wait for Madame Hooch to kick off. But at this moment, Diana next to him suddenly cried out in pain, and then her body fell directly from the flying broom. "Diana, what's wrong with you?" Maureen was quick-witted and swooped down quickly to grab Diana's hand. This was not easy. After all, Diana was a fourth-year student and was more difficult to fight than Maureen. Maureen turned his broom and turned Diana onto his broom, and then landed on the grass at a safe angle. Not only Diana, but Philia also slipped off her broomstick while holding her stomach. James and Albus grabbed Philia together and spun her to the grass. What happened? The audience was noisy, looking at Diana and Philia, who suddenly fell off the broomstick without knowing why. The game hadn't started yet, and two Gryffindor players suddenly fell off the broomstick. This was the first time this happened. Philia and Diana were pale, curled up with their stomachs, and beads of sweat had already appeared on their foreheads. Their expressions were very painful. "I don't know, my stomach hurts," Diana said with trembling lips. "Me too." Philia gritted her teeth. "How could this happen? Did you have a stomachache? What did you eat this morning?" James asked anxiously. "I didn't eat anything, I just ate half a chocolate frog given by Philia," Diana whispered. "I also ate a chocolate frog, which I got from Maureen at the time," Philia said painfully. "Maureen, where did you get your chocolate frog? Is it expired?" James turned around and asked. Maureen shook her head. "I don't know, Hugo found it in the middle of my plate, and Philia said she wanted to eat the chocolate frog, so I gave it to her." Maureen was startled. "Is there something wrong with the chocolate frog? Hurry up and call Madame Pomfrey to check them. Two of our team members are in trouble," Albus shouted to Madame Hooch. Madame Pomfrey hurried over quickly, and everyone carried Philia and Diana into the locker room, looking anxious. Madame Pomfrey was checking them there, and countless spectators outside were talking about it, not knowing what had happened. "What's going on? How could there be a problem with the chocolate frog?" James asked seriously. "The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar." Maureen couldn't find a suitable explanation. He thought for a moment and suddenly said, "Maybe someone wanted me to eat that chocolate frog on purpose." "What does this mean?" Albus asked. "Don't you understand?" Sweet in the corner said, "Someone wanted to frame Maureen and prevent him from playing, but Maureen didn't eat the chocolate frog. Instead, he let Philia and Diana eat it." "That's right," Maureen said coldly. "The only person who doesn't want Maureen to play with such a despicable means is..." Albus frowned. "Slytherin, did you offend any Slytherin?" Maureen's mind had already emerged with Carlo's disgusting face. He didn't expect that this guy would dare to frame him. No wonder Carlo just said, "I hope you don't have any fewer people," and so on. It turned out to be this meaning. But Maureen didn't quite understand. When everyone had breakfast, the seats were not fixed. How did Carlo know where he was going to sit? And he put the chocolate frog next to the plate in front of him in advance? Madame Pomfrey had checked the two of them and took out a bottle of purple potion from the medical box for them to drink. "The preliminary diagnosis is food poisoning. I have given them the antidote. It's nothing serious," Madame Pomfrey said. The others were about to breathe a sigh of relief when Madame Pomfrey continued, "But the two of them can't continue the game because they will be weak within an hour." "Can't participate in the game? Are you serious?" James said angrily. "We have already lost one Pork. Are we going to lose two more main players?" Losing three main players at once, especially Pork and Philia, two very powerful chasers, would be like adding insult to injury for Gryffindor. Their commanding players on the field were in trouble, and this game would be very bad. "It's none of my business, Potter. I'm only responsible for treating illnesses." Madame Pomfrey packed up her medical box. "Wish you good luck." She left the Gryffindor lounge with her medical box. Chapter 124. Three substitutes come on. "Good luck." James punched the wall hard. "One person is missing, but three people are missing." "James, don't be angry, we still have two people." Bruno looked at Sweet and Lily. Sweet gritted his teeth, as if he had some concerns, and said, "I can't participate in the competition, You don't want to participate. James' voice was mixed with anger. You must participate. Maureen stared at Sweet and said without question, I don't care what strange reasons you have every time. If you don't participate in the competition now, it means we have to give up. Pork's parents are still waiting in the stands. Do you want to disappoint Pork? Sweet lowered his head and was silent for a moment, and finally did not refute. Pick up your brooms. James was very angry. Pork disappeared, and Philia and Diana were in trouble again. The only person who can be the captain of Gryffindor now is him. Slytherin, right? Playing tricks, very good, I will make them look good. James spat heavily. Sweet took out a pair of Muggle sunglasses from his pocket and put them on. Maureen frowned slightly, but Sweet just said, I have some eye problems. When the sun is very strong, my vision will be very poor. This is why I don't want to play. This was the first time that Maureen heard of Sweet's strange disease. No wonder he refused when Poker wanted Sweet to play last time. Sweet was rarely seen during normal flying classes. Anyway, cheer up. Albus was less carefree than before and more serious. Can you Gryffindors continue the game? Madam Hooch asked as she walked in from outside. Yes, Madam Hooch. Maureen responded. That's good. I've heard about it, but the game is a game. It can't be interrupted for this reason. Come out quickly. Madam Hooch rode on her broomstick and left the locker room. Everyone knows what this game means. Beat them hard. James' eyes flashed with madness. As if infected by James's enthusiasm, every player's eyes were filled with high morale. When the 7 of them rushed out of the locker room, the whole audience cheered again, and the Gryffindor lion roared loudly in the air. Just now I got the news that 2 Gryffindor chasers can't play due to some physical reasons. This is really strange, and it is an unprecedented blow to Gryffindor. This game, 3 Gryffindor substitutes will take over. This is the first time that Gryffindor has sent all 3 first-year substitutes to the field. Facing the experienced Slytherins, how will they perform? In any case, let's cheer for them loudly. Hugo's voice rekindled the passion of the audience, and the players of both teams had already stood on the half of the Quidditch field. The captains of both teams shake hands. Madam Hooch said. James and Slytherin's captain Geoffrey shook hands. Geoffrey was a 7th-year student, tall and strong, and served as a chaser. He was a head taller than James, but James was not afraid at all. Without Porky and Philia, you can't beat us. Geoffrey's face showed a look of confidence. So you used dirty tricks to put our chaser in the hospital, right? James responded coldly. We don't need to do this, because the moment Porky is absent, you are doomed to lose. Geoffrey said arrogantly. Beside Geoffrey was Scorpius. Unlike the arrogance on the faces of other Slytherin players, he said to Albus with an apologetic look, I'm sorry, I originally applied to ask Madam Hooch to postpone this game, but Madam Hooch disagreed. We don't want to take advantage of others' misfortune. Really? Albus swung the bat, turned his neck, and said in a tough tone, I'm afraid you are the only one in your team who thinks so, but there is no need. Don't sympathize with your opponent, Scorpius, I will not show mercy. Some of your little bastards in Slytherin dare to use shameful means, we will definitely teach them a lesson. James held the bat, and a fierce light burst out of his eyes. What does this mean? I don't understand. Scorpius has been trying to improve the impression of other colleges on Slytherin. He would not do such a thing to frame Maureen, and he didn't understand why the 2 Gryffindor players were suddenly hospitalized. But just because he couldn't do it didn't mean that other Slytherins couldn't do it. You'll understand. James said coldly, because we are not just playing for ourselves in this game. He set his eyes on William and his wife next to Professor Kane and didn't continue. But everyone in Gryffindor understood what James was going to say, and everyone's eyes burst into fierce fighting spirit. I hope this is a fair and just game. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Madam Hooch used her wand to release the golden snitch. Although she said so, the Gryffindor players knew that this game was unfair from the beginning. Game on. Madam Hooch blew the whistle. Swish. 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 Countless voices rushed through the air. Sweet turned around and grabbed the quaffle and threw it to Lily. Lily and Owen walked side by side and rushed towards the opponent's goal. But Scorpius and Geoffrey joined forces to block their progress. At the same time, the bludger flew towards Lily from the left. Lily turned over and the ball had already been thrown out of her hand. Scorpius adjusted the flying broom in the air and rushed towards the quaffle. However, a red shadow was faster than him. Maureen had jumped over and grabbed the quaffle, passing over Scorpius' head and pulling away. Jeffrey seemed to have expected it. He knew that with Maureen present, Maureen would definitely not just look for the golden snitch, but would definitely act as the fourth chaser to attack. So the moment Maureen rushed forward, he had already jumped over. The broom under Jeffrey was a Firebolt 15 model, which was not much different from the Windhawk. In addition, there was a height difference, and the falling speed was faster. It had already hit Maureen from the upper left. But Maureen didn't dodge at all. He looked at Jeffrey coldly, with a strange light flashing in his eyes. The flight trajectories of all the players appeared in his mind. He knew what would happen next. Bang! A bludger rushed down and hit Jeffrey's shoulder. Jeffrey had no idea where the bludger came from. He leaned to the side, and Maureen's quaffle had already been thrown out. Gryffindor plus 10 points. The whole stadium was filled with crazy cheers from Gryffindor students. This good start was too important for Gryffindor, which was missing 3 main players. Gryffindor has scored a goal in less than 20 seconds under the galloping attack of Seeker Maureen. It seems that Gryffindor's cooperation is surprisingly good, especially James' assist, which smashed Jeffrey at the critical moment and successfully created an opportunity for Maureen. Jeffrey looked at James angrily. The bludger just now was hit by James. Don't be surprised, the game has just begun. James swung the bat. There was no usual playful smile on his face. Instead, there was an unfathomable ruthlessness. There was an invisible fire burning in his eyes. Chapter 125 Genius Batsman. Many students were not optimistic about Gryffindor, which was missing 3 main players. After all, Gryffindor sent 3 first-year students. Compared with Slytherin, these 3 substitutes were too small and inexperienced, and it was difficult to turn the situation around. But everyone was wrong. The situation had been turned around from the beginning. No one expected that each player of Gryffindor would play so fiercely. Even with 3 first-year students on the court, they still firmly controlled the initiative. That first-year girl, attack her first. Jeffrey shouted to the other 2 chasers. Lily was the smallest on the court. Among the 3 first-year substitutes, she was a girl and looked the easiest to bully. So Jeffrey's first thought was to deal with Lily first, and then things would be easier. With Lily's weak body, if she was hit by Jeffrey, a 7th-year student, she would probably fly off the broomstick immediately, fall down, and miss the game. Jeffrey, this won't do. Scorpius frowned. This kind of deliberate collision is a foul. Jeffrey obviously wants to use a deliberate foul to make Gryffindor's weakest player lose his fighting power. With Scorpius's personality, he disdains to do such a thing. Jeffrey didn't care about that at all. He rushed towards Lily. His flying speed and skills were much richer than Lily. As soon as Lily received the quaffle thrown by Owen, she found that 2 Slytherin chasers had rushed over from the left and right and surrounded her. But Lily was not a pushover. She was the smallest, but also the most flexible. She just turned over and flew around to get rid of one of the Slytherins who wanted to intercept her, but Jeffrey rushed up from behind and bumped into Lily. Maureen, now. Quick. Lily had passed the ball back to Maureen. She attracted 2 Slytherin chasers, which meant that the opponent's defense had a gap. Maureen could take advantage of this opportunity to attack. But Maureen had seen through Jeffrey's intention. He took Lily's quaffle and did not attack. Instead, he rushed to Lily's back and smashed the quaffle in his hand directly at Jeffrey's head. The quaffle flashed in the air with a whistling sound and arrived in an instant. Jeffrey was startled. He thought it was another manic bludger coming at him. He paused for a moment. During this pause, Lily had dodged the collision that Jeffrey was sure to hit. When Jeffrey saw clearly that it was the quaffle and not the bludger that was hitting him, his face was so pale that it could be twisted out of water. You shouldn't do this. You lost a chance to score a goal. Lily escaped from danger and flew past Maureen and shouted. Don't be silly. Losing a person is much more serious than losing a chance to score a goal. Maureen turned around and shouted to James, James, watch Lily, they are going to foul Lily. Dare to attack Lily. James looked at Jeffrey in a low voice, with an indescribable anger. He and Albus looked at each other and shouted, Albus. Unforgivable. Albus responded angrily, and rushed out from different directions with James at the same time. The short sticks in their hands had intercepted a bludger and hit the bludger to James. The performance of James and Albus made the whole audience boil. They used a very strange tactic. The bludger was flying around and hitting the players uncontrollably. The task of each batter was to drive the bludger away from their own players. But James and Albus did the opposite. James hit the bludger to Albus, and Albus used the bat to drive the bludger towards James. The bludger had no chance to escape. It kept running back and forth between James and Albus, and was firmly controlled by them. Once the Slytherin wanted to rush over to intercept it, the controlled bludger would be called up by James and Albus, and the Slytherin players had to move aside to avoid the bludger. We just don't want to play seriously. James hit the bludger at Jeffrey's head with a stick. Jeffrey rolled awkwardly and avoided the bludger. You forced us to play seriously. Albus rushed up to hit the bludger back. This time Jeffrey didn't dodge. His broom was hit hard by the bludger and it was directly broken. The broken broom began to tremble. Jeffrey screamed in shock and anger, and flew towards the ground with trembling control. Last time Albus just joined the team, someone wanted to target him, and I put him in the hospital for 2 weeks. James did not let Jeffrey go just because his broom was broken. He rushed out and swung the bat again. How many days do you want to stay? James threw the bludger at Albus. Did you dare to use despicable means to bump into our sister in front of the two of us? Did you get our consent? Albus backhanded the oncoming bludger at Jeffrey's head with his bat. The bludger flashed a phantom in the air. Jeffrey screamed, his nose was hit by the bludger, and he flew off the flying broom, rolled twice in the air, and fell heavily to the ground. His nose was bleeding. Do you really think that you dare to take advantage of others when Pork and Philia are not here? The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. James and Albus crossed each other in the air and clapped their hands. Lily, under the cover of James and Albus, had seized the opportunity and put the ball into the goal. The Gryffindor students cheered again. Hugo's excited commentary echoed throughout the stadium. What a surprise. Just now, Jeffrey from Slytherin obviously wanted to use some goblin tricks to hit Lily, the youngest girl in Gryffindor, but Maureen from Gryffindor rescued Lily in time. Jeffrey's behavior annoyed Lily's two brothers, James and Albus. These two talented beaters who are usually sloppy, seemed to be in full swing today when Pork and Philia were not around. Lily was protected by her two brothers, so Jeffrey's goblin tricks were not used. Instead, she was knocked to the ground by James and Albus. Madam Hooch blew the whistle for a timeout. Jeffrey looked very bad and was curled up on the ground. His Firebolt 15 had already broken, and Albus's bludger was really terrible. The students of Slytherin no longer had the look of confidence they had at the beginning, because they found that Gryffindor seemed to have completely changed today. Whether it was James and Albus who cooperated well, or Maureen who acted as the fourth chaser, they all had a fighting spirit that could not be underestimated. Jeffrey's nose had stopped bleeding. When the broom was broken, he relied on his experience to fall to the ground, so when Albus hit him with a bludger, he only fell from a height of 1 meter. I'll remember you. Jeffrey had already changed to a spare broom, looking at James and Albus viciously. You only remember it now, I thought you would be smarter. James responded coldly. The two of them used their bats to control the bludger throughout the game and did not make any physical contact with Jeffrey. Jeffrey was only hit by the bludger, so Madam Hooch did not call a foul on them. The battle in this game was already very fierce, and the blood of the entire Gryffindor team was completely aroused. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.